Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to the November 15th, 2022 Federal Way City Council meeting. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, undivided, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome everyone. I would say we've got on this side, we've got 4 council members, and on our screen, we've got 3 council members appearing remotely. We've got Councilmember Norton, Councilmember Erica Norton, Councilmember Lydia Acefa Dawson, and our Deputy Mayor Susan Honda. And we'll let them, perhaps during their reports, talk about the exciting things they're up to. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and get started. The Mayor's Emerging Issues and Report. We had recent community events. We had the Dick's Drive-In groundbreaking on 11/2. It's exciting business. We've got upcoming events. We've got the Paint the Plow kickoff November 7th at 4 p.m. The Boys and Girls Club and the Teen Center, 2 separate locations. And that'll be a great event. These are the snow plows, and they are decorated by the Boys and Girls Club, so that's always a great event. We've got a tree lighting event at Town Square Park on Saturday, December 3rd at 4 p.m. And all kinds of exciting things happening in our community. With that, let's turn to the most important part of the evening, which is public comment. And we've got, I'll go ahead and read them off. And remember, according to the council rules, we ask you just state generally where you, what city do you, or area do you live in. And then green means go, yellow means you've got 30 seconds, and red means please stop. And I don't like to interrupt people, but I think it is important that we be fair. And everybody else knows the rules from there. All right, Grace Lubrano. Is Grace here? Maybe she just stepped out for a second. I'll put it at the bottom of the stack, and we'll come back to Grace. Okay, Alexander Milstein. And as he makes his way there, Barbara McMichael will be next.
Hello, my name is Alex Milston, and I'm a resident of Federal Way. I'd like to speak in favor of the proposed idea for the TC3 property. I think that mixed-use buildings would be amazing use for that very strategic location, especially due to its proximity to the transit station, the PAC, and the park. I also think that it could be worth thinking about using a portion of the commercial parts of the development for the public market that's been talked about a lot. I think that overall the proposed idea is really great, and I think that using a portion of it for the market could be a very good use of the commercial parts of it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alex. Okay, Barbara McMichael.
Good evening, Barbara McMichael, Des Moines. I'm the sole staff member for SoCo Culture, funded by For Culture. SoCo is a coalition of cultural organizations throughout South King County and includes here in Federal Way Center Stage, the Arts Commission, Federal Way Chorale, the PAC, Federal Way Performing Arts Foundation, Federal Way Symphony, Harmony Kings, Historical Society of Federal Way, Pacific Bonsai Museum, Pacific Islander Association of Washington, Rosebud Children's Theater Conservatory, Rhododendron Species Botanical Garden, and many more. Recently, I spoke at a program of the Washington City County Managers Association, and my message was that for too long, cultural funding was considered a frill in public funding. But here in Federal Way and in all of South King County, we've come to understand that culture is foundational to society. Access to cultural expression is vital if our children are to thrive. Preservation of cultural tradition and heritage is vital to our feelings of connectedness in the world. And understanding the nuances of the historical record and the shortcomings as well as the heroics of our ancestors is essential if our society is to move forward wisely. So I'm here tonight to congratulate you. I understand that you've been in conversations about providing further funding to the Historical Society of Federal Way. The society has been diligent in preserving the stories of the city, but as Federal Way has grown, so have the challenges in serving your expanding demographics, and that additional funding will go to good purpose. One more comment, if I may. Several years ago, SoCo Culture added trees to its cultural portfolio. In fact, it was Powell's Wood that supplied us with the name of Engaging Trees for our new initiative, emphasizing the cultural importance of trees to South King County. We've developed programming and advocacy efforts around trees. We brought Tree Tour 22 to Pacific Bonsai Museum this summer. This fall, Green River College hosted a talk by scientist and best-selling author Robin Wall Kimmerer, who talked about the importance of trees in indigenous culture and how trees are regarded as people in their own right. In another program, Snohomish tribal member Mike Evans, carver of a welcome figure for the Kent History Museum, talked about how his ancestors' DNA has been identified in trees as human remains decompose in the soil and are taken up by the roots. Now, I'm not a scientist, but the cultural significance of that assertion is powerful. So please understand that the big trees you see in our community today contain legacies, perhaps beyond what we can even comprehend. And in the parklands that have been entrusted to Federal Way, such as the Steel Lake Annex, a gift from the Forward Thrust era, the expectation then and now is that you will preserve this as green space and recognize your duty to safeguard the mature trees on that land for perpetuity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Ron Walker. And then after that, Jeffrey Tancaridi.
Greetings, Mayor, City Council. My name is Ron Walker, and I live in Twin Lakes. If we ask the wrong question, we will get the wrong answer. So you just moved into a beautiful new house in a cul-de-sac in an unincorporated county. You walk out to that big, beautiful, wedge-shaped backyard, and you think, what can I do with this beautiful property? I know. I will build a mother-in-law house and lease it out, and I'll make good money. But then you look back and you see your 3 kids on their devices in front of the TV, and you think, no, that's not what I'm gonna do. You decide to put in the monster of all big toys, an above-ground pool, a trampoline, and a zip line running down the side of the house. Now your 3 kids and all the kids in the neighborhood are coming to your house because your house is the place to be. Summertime barbecues with the neighbors, and in the wintertime, s'mores on the outdoor pit. You've brought life to the whole neighborhood. It's not about ROI for TC3. It's about the best value to people. People nowadays are in their houses, they're in their phones, disconnected. The people need connection. They long for significance and a place to give them life other than work. A place that attracts people to our city and builds on the assets we already have. Does the downtown need mixed use? Urbanization? Absolutely. But not on that piece of property. It's too valuable for that. It's too valuable to build something generic. It must be a showpiece. That piece of property is the most unique piece of property in all South County. For the sake of the whole city, we need to put something up there that's a showstopper. That's what my thoughts are. I have something I want to hand out to you to take a look at, if you would, please. Oh, it's-
Thanks, Ron. Thank you. Okay, Jeffrey Tancaridi. Oh, sorry. Were you,
I just wondered if there's a few questions or anything.
no, we're okay. Thank you very much, Ron.
All right.
We'll take a look at that. Thank you. Jeffrey Tangredi.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Jeff Tancredi, Federal Way resident. The reason for the cart ordinance, I believe, is to get the folks that are addicted to drugs off the street and into treatment. King County and Olympia do not seem to be in a hurry to get these folks into treatment. We, the people, the residents of Federal Way, would like these folks that are addicted to drugs, get them into treatment. The current laws allow the addicted to use hard drugs without consequences. They can't be arrested for theft. They can't be arrested for using hard drugs because it's a misdemeanor at best. So what is the solution? The legislature has tied the hands of the police. The only option is to pass an ordinance to make it a violation to push a cart with belongings that do not belong to the drug addict. The addict will receive a large trash bag, I believe, to put their belongings in the hopes that it will spur them to get into treatment and get off the streets. They're not being punished. These addicts are not being punished, okay? They can steal and they can use hard illegal drugs. That's not punishment. The punishment is not getting them into treatment. So what we can do as the residents of Federal Way is, let's take the 2 hotels that King County bought despite our objection. Let's take the 2 hotels and take the first floor and staff it with professionals and get these folks off the street and into treatment. So the cart ordinance is just a vehicle. It's a way for us to try to work around the fact that the police can't do their job and get them arrested. So let's put them into treatment. Let's do the humanitarian thing. Get them off the street because they're not eating right. They're not hydrated properly. They're dying. So let's get them off the street and get them into the first floor. Let's do an up or down vote. Let's vote on that. Have a vote and say, do you want them to go into the first floor of the 2 hotels that King County bought? And then let's see them come back in there and try to override what we did. And that'll tell you how much they really care about getting them into treatment.
All right, thank you. Marie Shakwa. And then Aaron Walsh.
Good evening. I'm going to be talking about the Steel Lake Park Annex. Talked to Mr. Walsh there, and he said we can't go back in time, but Public Works and Parks could have been looking for property back 26 years ago. They would have found the property a lot less expensive. You guys are offering 2 options. One is a town square park built in 2004, and 2 separate ball fields that are not even in walking distance of the city center. And neither are equal or better than the Steel Lake Annex deed. When T3 is built and Sound Transit builds, there will be more apartments in the city center. What park do you think the kids will use? They have been working on this O&M for 2 years, and now it's budget time, and they are ramming the O&M down the citizens' throats. Parks has already taken part of Steel Lake Park by fencing an area. There's 3 trailers, equipment, and other items in it. Steel Lake Parks could have been improved over the years, but as far as I can tell, nothing has been added. What other parks are you going to take away? I have no confidence in the mayor and the council to make decisions that reflect what the citizens want and need. Right now, I am ashamed to say I live in Federal Way.
Aaron Walsh. And then after Aaron, we've got Evan Cook.
Good evening, Mayor Farrell and members of the City Council. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Aaron Walsh. I live in Federal Way. I'm part of the Human Services Commission. I just wanted to talk briefly about how excited I am to go through the process of looking at grant applications through ARPA. I think it's a really incredible opportunity for us as a community to come together and heal after the pandemic. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you for all your leadership and discussions in the process and all the hard work you'll do moving forward to make that all happen. My one request is if there is any opportunity to, within ARPA, increase the amount of the funding given and directed to human services. It'd be great if you could keep that in mind. I know the city has a lot of needs and you've got a lot of things that you need to do, and I fully appreciate that. If anything you're thinking about doing doesn't work out, or for some reason extra funding becomes available, please consider human services. All the people impacted by the pandemic, going through domestic violence, mental health issues, substance abuse issues, issues with homelessness and housing insecurity, issues with education. There's so many ways people have been impacted by the pandemic, and there's a lot of need out there and a lot of great organizations that could increase their capacity to help if they had more funding. So please keep that in mind as you're working on ARPA. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. All right, Evan Cook.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, council, Mr. Mayor, everybody not here. I see you guys on the screen. I just wanted to come by tonight, and one, I just love listening to public comment and hearing everybody speak so passionately about the city of Federal Way. So I just figured I'd get up tonight and do my part, right? I just wanted to come tonight and promote a benefits concert that is going down this weekend at Thomas Jefferson High School. It's a collaboration between the Multi-Service Center, Thomas Jefferson High School's Black Student Union, and the Federal Way Black Collective. And it's this Saturday. It's a concert. The entry is Thanksgiving food. The goal is to raise enough food to provide Thanksgiving meals for 33 families. A lot of performers, spoken word, hip hop, poetry, and different things that'll be shared over the weekend. And it's also an opportunity for us to share our gains and our community safety meetings. And so we'll be passing out safety information, things that community members and students could do to stay safe in the city of Federal Way. It's growing ever more dangerous. And to just kind of look after themselves and take up their part in community. And so I just wanted to take the time to invite everybody in the city and also the council, the mayor, and everybody in here to this concert. Doors open at 4:30. The show will start at 5:30. And just come out and come support and help us put a voice out to stop youth violence, to stop violence in general, to take ownership of our city. And one way that we know to do that is to just share experiences, enjoy our time together, enjoy great music, a great DJ. And so, just look forward to seeing everybody out there. I left flyers in the back there just in case I don't stay the entire show. And other than that, feel free to reach out. If you don't want to go to the show and you do want to donate food, donate a meal to a family, just reach out to one of the listed organizations, whether it be Thomas Jefferson High School's Black Student Union, the Federal Way Black Collective, or the Multi-Service Center, or you can just reach out to me directly, Evan Cook. It's Googleable, I guess. I look forward to seeing everybody this weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, Evan. And if you could put some on the desk there for people when they walk out, that'd be great too. Thank you very much. Has Grace joined us? Grace Lubrano? Is she on? She's not online, is she? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So Grace Lubrano, Karen Brugado.
Good evening, Mayor Farrell and City Council. I have already sent you an email, but let me read it to you right now. Oh, I'm Karen Brugado, and I do represent the Arts Commission tonight, and I am a 30-year resident. Tonight, the City Council, as part of the consent agenda, will accept $50,000 in funding from the King County for COVID pandemic relief for the Performing Arts Center. These funds are designated to help arts and cultural programs at the PAEC. These funds are greatly needed by the PAEC resident arts groups. I specifically named the Federal Way Symphony and the Federal Way Chorale. The Federal Way Symphony and the Federal Way Chorale have experienced significant losses due to COVID-19 pandemic, and these new funds, if given to them, will offset the costs and the specific use of the PAEC this year. When the PAEC first opened 5 years ago, there were 6 performing arts groups. Now we're down to 3. 2 of those groups that are not resident artists anymore left because of the cost of the PAC. With the high cost of the PAC coupled with austerity from COVID, The symphony and the chorale have experienced large deficits. Spending and the cost of the PAC far exceeds ticket sales. Mr. Brian Hoffman, General Manager of the PAC, has confirmed to you that one resident arts group, the Federal Way Youth Symphony, enjoys free use of the PAC for all practices and performances. Accepting these funds for the Federal Way Symphony and the Federal Way Chorale would support all resident arts groups equally. And I encourage you, please, tonight, to accept the funds for the Federal Way Symphony and the Federal Way Chorale. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. All right, Suzanne Vargo.
Hi, thank you, Mayor and Council, all my friends. 57-year resident of Federal Way. I oppose the O&M to be built at our beloved Steel Lake Park or any other environmentally sensitive community open space. You know, I was raised watching my grandfather take pen to paper when he saw that somebody wasn't being represented. And I watched him pump that fist. He'd watch an article on TV, and he made a difference. And we were all raised that if we wanted to make a difference, we got involved. We did our research. We spoke up. Why should we stand up to this council, provide factual information, put forth great efforts to educate and speak for those who do not have a voice when we are never heard? I've been doing this work for over 7 years, and frankly, I'm sick and tired of the same old here in Federal Way. You may not realize, but every agency that I've been in contact with over the years is very well aware how difficult it is to work with the city of Federal Way. We have a terrible reputation for working alongside those that are here to help us have balance in our city. It is the city's obligation to take care of their parks department. Since when did it become all of our job to sacrifice our beautiful and beloved park? It's something that should have been done over 25 years ago. The city neglected their own, and now it is we that will sacrifice our community park. It is not for the citizens to sacrifice their health, well-being, history, culture, because the city neglected what they should have done such a long time ago. Should have secured funds and lands when it was plentiful and doable. The fault of this situation does not lay on all of you, but of those in the past. We have brought forth the law, the deed, the title information. We have spoken out feverishly in opposition. We have offered solutions, but more importantly, we have said, nope, not here, not at Steel Lake Annex Park. We should remember how this community stuck together and accomplished in the past great things with the city's input, not the city's dictatorship. This is our park. It is the foundation of our families, how we grow and share experiences. This park belongs to the people. You were hired to take care of us. The city has a department that should take care of us and our needs. This was given to us. It was a gift. Do you take gifts away from people that you offer to? Please take this opportunity to check your hearts and remember what it feels like to be put down and ignored. Allow yourself to be creative and brilliant and work for a solution for all of us. I know that we can do this. I'm tired of talking and being angry. Please, thank you so much.
All right, Grace Lubrano. Okay, so I believe Ms. Lubrano has left. All right, thank you. That's all the pink sheets I have for public comment.
Mayor, we do
Yes.
have someone online. We have Cynthia Ricks McAtan with her hand raised online.
Oh, great.
Thomas
Okay.
would unmute her from the back.
Okay.
Good evening, council. Thank you so much for letting me speak tonight. I'm sorry I have a sick child and I cannot leave home, otherwise I would be there with you. Tonight, I'm speaking as the Community Integration Program Manager for Virginia Mason Franciscan Health. As I've reported in the past, we did receive a grant from the Department of Commerce Office of Firearm Safety and Violence Prevention for the Healthy Youth and Violence Prevention Initiative. The goal of the initiative is preventing violence, decreasing engagement with the juvenile justice system, and encouraging health and well-being for youth and young adults ages 12 to 24 in South King County. We did an RFP process and are now going to begin contracting with the following organizations that will be working specifically in Federal Way. Built to Lead program for their Closing the Gap workforce development, working for with 16 to 20 at-risk youth to do workforce development. Phenomenal She mentoring program, assisting 40 to 50 BIPOC female youth in Federal Way, and Game of Life mentoring for emotional fitness, helping 20 BIPOC youth address mental health needs. And these are typically kiddos needing we say tier 2 and tier 3, meaning multiple support systems. So I'm really pleased that we were able to fund some organizations that are specifically located here in Federal Way and are addressing the needs of our youth here in Federal Way. We also will be providing funding for 2 other programs who will serve Federal Way as well as other cities in South King County. Unleash the Brilliance, Think, Plan, Fly restorative practices, helping 60 BIPOC middle high school students. And Intercultural Children and Family Services, the Young Bulls Father Program, where they're helping justice-involved African-American fathers ages 18 and 24 help reunite with their children. So I'm really pleased about the opportunity to have a competitive process. Over 4 million we had over 4 million in requests of approximately 30 agencies. We were only able to award up to almost 1.5 million to 10 different agencies that are covering 13 different programs. And what I just read to you were the ones that are going to be specifically working in Federal Way. We will keep you posted on our efforts throughout the course of the year as we work with these organizations to provide these services. Thank you so much for your time. And if you have any questions, you know where to reach me, right down the street at St. Francis. Thank you so much.
All right. Any others?
I believe Betty Taylor wanted to speak on general comment.
All right. Betty?
So, okay, my name is Betty Taylor, and I'm just going to talk about good afternoon, good evening, council members, citizens. I'm just going to really speak about the ARPA funds. Those funds are desperately needed. Being on the Human Services Commission, I know that we're going to have to review the applications. We don't know how many applications are coming in, but we know they're going to come in. So with that saying, when they come in, we want to make sure that we have enough finances to help these agencies so they can run their program successfully. But without additional funding, we just can't help everybody. So I have a ballpark figure in my head. I'm just thinking, to really help agencies, I'm looking at a figure of, in my head, I'm just saying like even close to $1 million. I mean, 700,000 is not enough. But we need more funding. I mean, we just need more funding because it's kind of embarrassing to sit down and look at applications and look at the needs of the community or the needs of the nonprofit and know that you're not able to fund this program because of lack of funding. And this is Federal Way. This should not happen in Federal Way. We should have funding. We should have money. We should have resources, but we don't. And because we don't, then agencies suffer. Because we don't, communities suffer. Because we don't, people suffer. And then after they suffer, they complain. They complain because they weren't even told about where the funding is coming from. They were told because they didn't have enough information. They complain because they don't even know how to access they don't even know the procedure. How do they access these funds? So we should be ones to let them know. We should be ones to get the word out to these agencies. We should be ones to not let agencies go in the dark. Because right now, a lot of them are. They're in the dark. And we have no money. So that's all I want to say on that.
All right, thank you. Any others?
No, Mayor, I don't have anybody else.
All right, thank you. That concludes public comment. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. Now, let's move to item 5A, the presentations. Item A, proclamation, Small Business Saturday, November 26th. Deputy Mayor Honda to Greater Federal Way Chamber CEO Rebecca Martin. Becca, if you want to come on up to the podium. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Small Business Saturday. Whereas, according to the United States Small Business Administration, there are currently 32.5 million small businesses in the United States. And whereas, small businesses employ 46.8% of the employees in the private sector of the United States. And whereas 79% of consumers in the United States value the contributions small businesses make in their community. And whereas Shop Small is a nationwide movement to celebrate small businesses on Small Business Saturday and every day in order to help communities thrive and stay vibrant. Whereas 96% of consumers who plan to shop on Small Business Saturday said the day inspires them to go to small, independently owned retailers or restaurants that they have not tried before or would not have otherwise tried. And whereas 92% of companies planning promotions on Small Business Saturday said the day helps their business stand out during the busy holiday shopping season. Whereas 59% of small business owners said Small Business Saturday contributes significantly to their holiday sales each year. And whereas the City of Federal Way supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our neighborhoods. Now therefore, we, the undersigned mayor and city council members of the City of Federal Way, do hereby proclaim November 26, 2022 as Small Business Saturday in Federal Way. And we encourage all residents to shop small and support small businesses and merchants in the community on this day and throughout the year. Signed this day, November 15th, 2022. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we've got the council president, Linda Kochmar, here with our.
Can we take a picture with the other people behind us?
Sure.
Well, let's do this one.
Okay, okay.
All right, now.
Do you want to say anything before we go?
Yes.
Would that be more appropriate?
Sorry, I have my marketing hat on. But I want to thank City Council not only for the work that you're doing here today, but also for your support of business in general. This past weekend, we celebrated 69 years of doing business in the Greater Federal Way area. 69 years. Before there was a city, there was a chamber. And before there was a chamber, there was business. Because this country was built on the backbone of small businesses. It's no different here in Federal Way. With more than 90% of our businesses are 10 employees or less, which means we are a small business engine in this part of our state. And I can tell you on behalf of our businesses at the Chamber of Commerce that they are strong, they are resilient, they are creative, they are innovative, they are hungry, and they are ready to be successful. So thank you for everything you do in support of the business community through the Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the business community, I will share the proclamation and perhaps even go home and buy myself cake to celebrate.
Very good. All right, thank you very much.
What kind of cake? Delicious cake.
As somebody with a small business, I encourage everyone to support
Should we get down?
Small Business Saturday.
Absolutely, thank you. Should we get down in front of the, yeah, let's all come down. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Because what we have to do here is because the little squares of the remotes. Susan and Erica and Lydia and everybody else.
Where do you want us to go? Let's go right, that center here, please.
People always tell me where to go.
say ice cream.
Ice cream. Ice cream.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you coming down too. That's really good. Ice cream.
Ice cream.
As I was thinking.
Get that enough on tape.
Oh, is that on tape too?
All right. Thank you very much, Becca. All right. Thank you.
Before she leaves, I was just going to let her know,
Yeah, go ahead.
the chamber used to meet when I first got here, which was before the city, in the back end of Coco's, which is now Black Bear Diner. So that back room used to be where the chamber would meet. That's where the city was born.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah, that back room. That's right. Okay, fun. A lot of different organizations in town would meet in that sort of back room area. Yeah, very good. That's right. That's right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it, Becca. Thanks for being here. Okay. Okay, now moving on to item 6, Council Committee and Regional Committee reports. Our Parks, Recreation, Human Services, and Public Safety Committee Chair, Councilmember Walsh.
Good evening. The committee met a week ago tonight on 11/8, and I first want to thank, I was out of town at the time, so I was joining by Zoom. I want to thank Lydia Asepadasan for chairing the meeting that evening. Thank you, Lydia. And we covered a number of items, and items B through K, so 9 items on the consent agenda, were covered in our Parks, Recreation, Human Services, and Public Safety Committee that evening.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much. Land Use and Transportation Committee, LUTC, Councilmember Dovey. Chair.
Yes, thank you. Our next meeting is in December the 5th, I believe, at 5 o'clock in this chamber. And are we going to have a presentation on park fees yet? Is that going to be rolling up that soon?
No, not for December.
Okay. Well, watch our agenda. You heard it mentioned in our study session and about downtown that we were talking about having, reviewing park fees for new doors in downtown so we can actually address the need for more green space, more park, more recreation, a funding source for our parks to continue doing things. I thought it was going to be in December. I guess it's going to roll into January, but that's the highlight that I see at LUTC coming up.
All right, thank you very much. Finance, Economic Development, Regional Affairs Committee, FedRec, Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next meeting is going to be on November 22nd at 5 p.m. in this room. Also, the meeting will be available on Zoom. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, with regard to Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, LTAC, Councilmember Asepadasan.
Thank you, Mayor. We had a meeting last week where we reviewed a grant application, and we had a forum, so we were so we were able to have our meeting. And now our next meeting is going to be January 11th, and there's some considerations that we're going to be bringing to council for council's approval. Staff is drafting that. So our next meeting is January 11th. I think I already said that. And then on other regional committees that I'm involved in, Regional Loss Safety and Justice Committee will be meeting on December 1st, and it's going to be our last meeting for the year. And it's also going to be my last meeting that I will be chairing. And the agenda item for that meeting is voter rights for incarcerated people. And also last week, the Green Duwamish River and Central Puget Sound Watershed, or RIA 9, had a meeting last Wednesday, and there were legislative priorities that were discussed, including a letter that's going to be going to the governor regarding these priorities and other priorities that they would like the governor to consider. And also there's a discussion of having all the RIAs in the region, maybe even in the state, to come together just so they can share information amongst the different entities and see what they're doing. And then Highline Forum, there's gonna be a meeting tomorrow. I won't be there, but that also will end my co-chair position for that forum. And yeah, so thank you, Mayor. That ends my report on all the activities, regional and with LTAC. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor and Regional Committees report. Deputy Mayor Hondo.
Thank you. So the PIC meeting last week had several really interesting things to discuss. One was the legislative agenda, and there was a city that actually didn't support the legislative agenda for PIC, which is really quite interesting. But they did decide to extend the nominations for regional boards and committees until tomorrow, November 16th, at the end of the business day, which I believe is 5 p.m. So if it's not too late to sign up for a regional board or committee with SCA if you're interested, just do it before 5 p.m. tomorrow. It's pretty simple to do, and if you need help, please let us know. There also, on December 15th, there will be a caucus with SCA from 12 to 1 and 1 to 2. There's north and there's south, and there are 2 vacancies on the board, 1 vacancy each in the north and 1 in the south, and we are, of course, in the south. So if you're interested in that, let us know. The senior commission meeting is tomorrow from 2 to 4, and thank you to Council President and Councilmember Jack Walsh for volunteering to be there. And this afternoon, Amy sent all the council members our legislative agendas for the last 3 years. So it would be really interesting or helpful if every council member could look at those and decide what it is that we would like on our legislative agenda this year. SCA has been asking for our legislative agenda now for several weeks, and the sooner we can share that with them, the better. And Mayor, I was wondering if perhaps the council could meet with our lobbyists this year. We have, boy, I can't remember the last time we met with our lobbyists, and we used to do that on a pretty regular basis. They used to come to FedRAP.
Of course, yes. Yeah.
And the Board of Health is meeting this Thursday, and Skateboard met today. And they talked about their legislative agenda, and we're going to finish that on December 13th and get it into the hands of the legislature before the session. It's really important to have your agenda done and have the discussions with your legislators before the session. So hopefully we can get that done. But thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, Council President Kochmar.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm going to, Deputy Mayor, I'm going to allow our very competent Parks Chair to be at the Senior Commission tomorrow while I'm going to take over the responsibility of being with the Mayor with the East Thurston School kids who are coming for a field trip to City Hall to meet the Mayor. And so I'll be there in the morning for that. I do want to say, with public safety, I know that there's some concern in our community about public safety in the schools, primarily because of what's happened in Seattle recently, and that we will be discussing this. I know that the school district has discussed it already, but we will be discussing this at our joint meeting with the school board at the end of January, more just to let people know that we do have plans in place, and that we do have school resource officers in our schools already, just so that you know that. We did that many years ago with the school district. Also, on December 3rd, when there is the Christmas tree lighting at 4:30, excuse me, I think it's at 4 o'clock, the Performing Arts Center will host the Federal Way Symphony. We'll have their symphony Christmas concert at 2:30 and 4:30. So when you're here for the Christmas tree lighting, you might try to go for the Federal Way Symphony at the same time. And then finally, because it's Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we have many people in our community that are having problems with inflation, and if you are out shopping and you find a deal where you get to buy a turkey and you get a free turkey, please bring one over to the Multi-Service Center, to the food bank. And if you can't do that, bring over $25, $20. They can double your money. and help the people in our community that are in need at this time of year. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, now let's move on to the consent agenda. These items have gone through committee. They can be passed all at once. But after I read them, I'll ask if council member will want to pull an item for separate consideration. 7A, minutes for the November 1st, 2022 special and regular meetings. B, King County COVID-19 pandemic funding for PAC. C, Sahali track replacement completion and release of retainage. D, jail services agreement, Nisqually Jail. E, jail services agreement, Score Jail. F, memorandum of understanding MOU contract amendment for fiscal year 2019 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, JAG. G, fiscal year 2021 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance, JAG Grant, ScanX Scout Kit Portable X-ray Purchase. Boy, that's a mouthful. H, agreement between the Washington Traffic Safety Commission, WTSC, and the Federal Way Police Department to provide grant funding for traffic enforcement. I, public safety testing, PST service agreement. J, South King County Housing and Homelessness Partners, SKHHP, 2023 Work Plan and Budget. K, 2023-24 Human Services Commission Work Plan. L, 27th Avenue Southwest at 344th Street Compact Roundabout 85% Design Report and Bid Authorization. M, South 348th Street NHS Preservation Project 85% Design Status Report and Authorization to Bid. N, Resolution, Acceptance of Transportation Grant Funding. O, Adaptive Traffic Control System King County Agreement. P, Award 2023 Street Sweeping Services Contract. And Q, Contract Increase for Concrete Beveling Services Trip Hazard Removal Contract. Council, are there any items that you would want pulled for separate consideration? Councilmember Walsh? Or are you just getting ready? Deputy Mayor Honda?
Yes, I'd like to pull B, King County COVID-19 pandemic funding for the PAC.
All right. Council, any other items to be pulled? All right, hearing none. Council President Kochmar, do you have a motion?
Yes, I move approval of items A and then items C through Q for approval on the
Second.
consent agenda.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, matters passed unanimously. Item B, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I pulled this because when this is brought up at the last, I think it was the Parks meeting, that this was brought up to us. I asked if it's what this money could be used for, because in reading the letter from our King County Council member, there wasn't a specific use for this, only to use it for COVID-19 pandemic funding for, for those things that needed funding during the pandemic. And in talking with the arts commissioners, I believe that this it's $50,000, and I would like to see it used for our resident art groups to support them. They are having a hard time. I think this is a great way that we could give them some more funding to use the PAC. And I did bring that up at the last meeting, and John Hutton said that there were other uses for it, but I do believe that this would be the best use for it. Thank you.
All right, John, you said, you were quoted there saying there are other uses for it. What are the other uses?
Yes, the PAC staff had identified using this money to support the Arts for Youth component that was lost during the COVID pandemic. So investing in the youth for arts was their plan for that grant.
Okay, Councilmember Dovey?
I think we need to accept the money. I don't know if we have to decide if it's going to youth tonight or to some other organization that may use the PAC. That might be another discussion, but I wouldn't want to get into the weeds of who we're giving it to. Let's take the money, and then if we have to, send it to the committee and let them decide who gets it, unless we get a different recommendation from our Parks Director. But let's vote to take the money, use it in our city, replace the $50,000 we lost because of the pandemic, and then decide the best use of it.
Okay.
Oh, definitely we need to accept the money, but I did want to bring up that I think there's a better use for it than was mentioned at the last meeting.
Okay, so is there a motion?
No.
I move to accept the King County COVID-19 pandemic funding for the PAC.
I'll second that.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I would just like to suggest, I support that totally, but I'd like to suggest that perhaps we could, in our next meeting, we could have a little bit of discussion, both with the Arts Commission and with our Parks Department and the PAC on the best use
Sounds
of
good.
those funds. So
Are
that we can
you going to
direct
put
it
that
at
on your
time.
agenda, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, let's put it in the agenda, John.
Very good.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. We'll do that. All
Sounds
right.
good.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, matter passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, public hearing. This is item A under 8A, Program Year 2023 Community Development Block Grant CDBG Annual Action Plan. At this time, I will open the public hearing. We'll have a staff report from Sarah Bridgeford, a Community Services Manager. After that, we'll have the opportunity for some public comment, if there is any. Sarah?
Good evening. Let me just pull up my presentation, and I apologize. I thought maybe I did not look in advance, so I apologize about this delay. And you're here. So with that, good evening, Mayor Farrell, Council President Kochmar, Deputy Mayor Honda, and members of the council. This evening, I will be presenting our 2023 Community Development Block Grant CDBG Annual Action Plan. The policy question before you is, should City Council approve the Program Year 2023 Community Development Block Grant CDBG Annual Action Plan? I am not sharing my screen. Yes. Let's try that again. Okay. I'm good. Thank you. So that is our policy question. Should City Council approve the annual action plan? Just a quick overview in CDBG that this is a program of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and it provides annual grants to jurisdictions to provide decent housing, suitable living environments, expanded economic opportunities, and all services are primarily for low and moderate income individuals or persons. In this case, the city is a direct entitlement of the CDBG funds. And if we're looking at the three potential national objectives, all of our funds actually go to the first one, which is to benefit low and moderate income persons. And the reason for that is if we look at elimination of slum and blights, we actually don't have areas of our city that qualify, and urgent need is typically a natural disaster. The 2023 Annual Action Plan is our fourth year of our consolidated plan, which is a 5-year period. The consolidated plan is a plan that assesses affordable housing, community development needs, market conditions, and place-based funding for local projects. Within that, we have 4 adopted goals that you'll see on the screen. They are economic development, preserve affordable housing, prevent and address homelessness, and then establish and maintain suitable living environments. Our annual action plan implements the consolidated plan. This is a document that's required by HUD for any jurisdiction that receives CDBG funds. It's a summary of our planned actions, and I will go over a high-level view, including the projects that are recommended for funding in our 2023 annual action plan. The annual action plan is based on our 2022 actual allocation of $774,863. Our program year starts on January 1st, but typically we receive our actual allocation after Congress adopts the budget. So we get that in April, sometimes a little bit later, and submit our plan after that time. So our program year still runs January through December, but we have a delay in receiving all of these funds. So with that, with CDBG, there are 3 different categories that we will talk about our funding in. The first is planning and administration, which is capped at 20% of that annual allocation. Public services, capped at 15%. You can think of that in terms of direct services akin to our general fund grants that we give for social service providers. And then community economic revitalization funding, which is the balance of the funding plus any prior year funds that are remaining. And that is 65%. That's capital projects and some specific economic development. The first for our program and administration, we have $155,000 budgeted in 2023. This includes general oversight of the program, running RFPs, community engagement, planning and reporting to City Council and then to HUD, and any technical assistance and work with our grantees. Our public services that are recommended for funding, and this is following a competitive process with the Human Services Commission. They did evaluate the applications. You'll see some of this reflected in our general fund as well, as we use one common application for both of these processes. The Apprenticeship and Non-Traditional Employment for Women, or ANEW, is recommended for funding at $12,000. They provide a pre-apprenticeship program, not just for women, it is for any adults. And they will be doing that for 8 individuals using the CDBG funds. Catholic Community Services for case management for homeless individuals, and that is funded at $28,000, and they are recommended for 21 individuals receiving that service. It's an intensive program looking at the housing and getting out of shelter and other services. The Federal Way Inclusion Program is recommended for $30,000. They would serve 225 individuals, and they provide social and skill-building classes for individuals with developmental disabilities. And then we have Orion Employment Services at $18,000, providing employment services for individuals with disabilities. That's for 3 individuals. And then finally, Solid Ground at 17 persons, and they are providing rent and move-in assistance, but it comes with housing counseling as well. So a little bit of a more in-depth service than rent assistance only. And then we have our SERF, or Community Economic Revitalization Funding. And with that, we have our minor home repair. This is a recommended pilot program. In thinking about the city's housing repair program, we have enough funding to run that in 2023 without requiring 2023 funds. And one of the things that we continue to hear is that the program requirements and projects are too large. We're having more and more requests around accessibility for seniors, persons with disabilities, smaller projects just in general. So the recommendation is to run a pilot program that would be a what's called a presumed benefit category, and it would be for older adults who would be able to qualify with fewer requirements. It would be a grant-based program, whereas our regular housing repair is a loan-based 0% interest deferred program. But this would be slightly more accessible, quicker. We have some different ideas on how to run this and get the assistance out and to individuals who are trying to age in place. Highline Business Development Programs, $100,000 for technical assistance to microenterprise and startups, and that would serve a total of 50 persons. And then Fusion Transitional Housing Acquisition, this would acquire 1 unit for the purpose of transitional housing. It's not the service side. They would be funding that in other ways. And then the Multi-Service Center Villa Capri for renovation of the Villa Capri Affordable Housing Complex. This would take care of some repairs that they're in need of, enabling them to stabilize that apartment complex, retaining that affordability for 86 units. And then we are wrapping up our timeline on this. You'll see that we're here for a public hearing and council consideration. And as I mentioned earlier, we don't anticipate submitting this to HUD until we have that congressional deadline. We do submit with King County and 4 other jurisdictions, which means that we often have additional delays just as we all work together to make any changes that we might need to. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions.
All right, council, any questions? All right. Do we have any public comment, Stephanie? Oh, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Sarah, thank you very much for your presentation. And on the minor home repairs, what kind of repairs are you anticipating that you would be doing or someone would be doing?
Yes, yeah, I will not be doing the repairs, but they will be most likely a lot around accessibility. It could be repairs to flooring, mostly internal, and that comes down to the regulations that come with the federal funds. We would develop, if this is approved by council this evening, we would actually develop policies and procedures that would go through the commission, committee, and council process for approval. So you would expect to see that in 2023. Again, we would have enough time to do that before we have access to those funds.
I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right,
So,
Council President?
Thank you. So Sarah, this is not really concerning your presentation, but maybe just general questions. You know, it's getting colder. I actually saw a woman with a cart going into a woods this evening for the night. And what are we doing so far as hotels or Red Lion Inn? What's going on?
Yes, so the Red Lion is still under renovation and rehabilitation, and there is not a set open date, but we are looking at other solutions. Severe weather shelter, we are prepared to respond. We don't fund that with CDBG. We have general funds for that, that we will be working with Fusion as the provider using a hotel-based model. And then there was a conversation, we may be looking at some other solutions and should have an update shortly on that.
So shortly means when?
I will talk with Brian tomorrow, and,
got it.
and,
Yeah.
yes.
I've been working on this, and what we need to do, because the Red Lion was purchased by King County, and then they did substantial refurbishing, that has taken much longer than we anticipated. It's not ready to go. Excuse me. It's not open, it's not ready to go, it will not be ready for this winter. So, and the other hotel was for health through housing, and that's not ready to go. So what we're gonna be doing is, we haven't hit the criteria yet for the emergency shelter to open up the community center, which is a certain protocol that is reached, but we are going to be issuing vouchers, and that's what we're gonna be, hotel vouchers, and make sure we get those out there. We're also looking at opening up the Stevenson Hotel for availability. That's something that we're gonna be working on. I've got a meeting tomorrow with Brian Davis and Sarah, in which we're gonna be working on a plan to make sure we fully utilize the funding that we have available for emergency funding as it is very cold out. You're welcome, thank you. Yeah, that's something I've been thinking about, and we actually have a meeting tomorrow on that very issue. All right, Councilmember Walsh, and then Dovey, and then Deputy Mayor.
Sarah, since you clarified that you're not the one that's going to do the minor repairs, I appreciate that clarification. But who is it? Is that contracted out? Is it city staff? Who does the repairs?
We would contract out, similar to what we do for our regular home repair program. We are looking at different options, and I will not get the term correctly, but there's a chance I'll look at Ryan and maybe he can help. We have an opportunity in our procurement to do almost like a retainer for contracts. We've been talking with Joanna, and that would be our preferred model. We don't know if we're going to be able to do that, but that would give us the ability to go out to bid, have contractors apply, and do this again as a pilot, so work with us knowing that they may not have the scope and scale of projects that they thought they would, that give us some continuity in having access to a contractor.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, and I want to thank you and the Human Services Commission for all the great work on this. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Dovey.
My question was, Fusion 200,000. I mean, what does that really buy? Are they using that to multiply? I love the program, don't get me wrong, but 200,000 doesn't buy a house anywhere in the state of Washington. So what are they doing? I mean, are they bringing it together with somebody else, or what is it?
Fusion will often have other funds, but in this case, they actually submitted an application, and they believe that they'll be able to buy a condo unit or something similar, which is what they typically do. They're currently acquiring a unit using prior year CDBG funds, and that will close at about $215,000 for a condo unit. So they're optimistic that they'll be able to do that again next year.
So this is for next year, okay.
Yes.
And then the 100,000 for helping people with accessibility or something, I mean, that's great, but it's what, 15 people?
20.
maybe 20 if we're lucky?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to put it in perspective. I mean,
Yep.
we hear we need more money, and of course we do, but
Yes.
want to make sure we're talking what we're talking.
All right, thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. So, Mayor, when you say that we have funding, how much funding do we have for emergency cold weather shelter?
Sarah?
We have $28,000 for severe weather shelter, a little bit different than the sheltering of individuals right now.
Sheltering of.
So,
Well, hold on. No. For the availability for vouchers, how much do we have?
We don't, we could use, are you suggesting, I guess we need to have a conversation. Are you suggesting we use our severe weather shelter funds? Okay. So we have 28,000, and if we do that, then we would need to replace funds if we had severe weather.
Right. Well, it's cold outside, so we want to get people in. Deputy Mayor?
yeah, I was just going to say, if this winter is anything like last winter and it's starting out like that, we may need to put more funding into that.
That's what I'm anticipating.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
We'll have to come
Thank
back.
you.
I'll have to come back to council, and we'll do it with existing funds until. And Steve Groom, we'll need to have a conversation tomorrow. In fact, actually, why don't you, if you're available tomorrow at 2:30, check your calendar. We've got a meeting in my office with Brian Davis and Sarah about that issue. Let's make sure that you're there as well. Let's find available funds. Obviously, if we need to, we'll come back to council. It's making sure that people have shelter is obviously a very important component. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Thank you. And making sure that that word gets out wide and far. I do want to let everybody know that we have criteria for emergency shelter that, John, why don't you tell everybody what the criteria is, or Sarah, do you have the criteria off your
I do.
head? Well, I want to make sure because, and I think this is actually, I want to make sure that people understand what we're talking about. There's criteria in place in which we activate emergency shelter, and that relates to just, opening up the community center or opening up other things. But if you're out there right now we've all been watching the degrees very carefully. It's really cold, and, people don't care when they're outside about criteria. They want to get warm. So can you tell us what the criteria is?
Yes, the criteria for severe weather shelter is below 32 for 24 consecutive hours or 3 or more inches of snow anticipated in accumulation. And it does not address the cold temperatures at which you can get hypothermic really quickly. So we do recognize that this is not addressing the need for shelter year-round, but especially in colder months.
Right. So we're going to make sure that we get the message out wide and far, and we'll make sure that we utilize the resources to bring people in from the cold. Okay. And we'll get that out with the multi-service center, with our partners at with the day center and throughout the community. And even at the public libraries and other areas as well. But that's something we'll talk about for tomorrow. Okay. Councilmember Asafa Dawson?
Yeah, I'm curious. People who may not know that this is available to them, do we look for them, or what happens?
Well, that's the strategy I was just talking about. We'll make sure that we get that word out with our law enforcement officers at public libraries, with the multi-service center, with the day center. The day center frequently interacts with folks. We'll get the word out. But different religious organizations that have feeding programs. So that word is going to get out wide and far. And that's part of the communication plan we'll be talking about.
Yeah, but if they don't utilize those and they still happen to be out, is there a way we can find them? Because once you get cold and extremely cold, then you can't even move. And they may think they can weather it, or, I don't know, I'm just making worst case scenario. Do our officers kind of look for them as they're driving around? Because that's possible. They may not think they need it at the time, and then it's too late. In terms of ability to get around.
Councilmember, I was just thinking about that today. That very issue, actually, before the meeting. Brian Davis and I were actually having that exact conversation before the meeting about how to get those folks. So we're going to get creative. We're going to operate with a sense of urgency. Get people in from the cold.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment, and I was having the same thought. We literally had the same conversation a couple hours ago. Deputy Mayor Honda, did you have another question?
I do. If you could explain how we came up with the criteria and if that is criteria that other cities use. Oftentimes, we're the last city in King County to open a shelter and for extreme conditions. So if you could explain, how that criteria came to be. It seems to me that 1 inch of snow is too much, but 3 inches is sometimes hard to get to. So, but 1 inch, you're going to get cold, you're going to get wet, and you could freeze. So, do you have an explanation of how this criteria came to be?
Well,
Yeah.
the criteria's been in place for the past 8 years at least, since I've been mayor, and I think that precedes that. So it's really about the conditions that set an emergency. And that's where, we've calculated, what an emergency means in regard to opening up city resources. City employees are not normally trained to be, people running a shelter. And we don't normally have that. So, but that protocol's been in place for quite some time. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that?
And I would add that it is consistent with other cities in South King County, and one of the provisions is that we look for another shelter to be opening, so we actually communicate regularly as we approach cold weather. There are new protocols with the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, and it might be something that for future seasons that the cities, us and others in South King, will look at our severe weather protocol and the budgetary impacts and be able to make a decision if we change that policy.
Very good. All right, thank you very much. Okay, now, actually, Stephanie, the comment sheets that I have are for the item 8B, not 8A.
Okay.
And so we're on 8A.
I do have Cynthia Ricks McAtan with her hand raised.
Okay. Cynthia?
Thank you very much. Cynthia Ricks McAtan, Chair of the Human Services Commission. Just wanted to thank the council and the mayor this evening for considering the program year 2023 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. As you know, the Human Services Commission worked really, really hard on evaluating the applications that came in for CDBG. And we think we've done a pretty good job of making sure that we are meeting with this limited resource the needs of our communities here in Federal Way that have special and unique needs and varying neurological needs, as well as the economic development, the SURF funds. And so we're really pleased about the work that we've put in and our recommendation to the council. So if you had any questions about our deliberations and our process, I'm here. I've got 2 minutes left to answer any of those questions. But we thank you for supporting our efforts in reviewing them. We had a lot of applications to review, and sometimes it's difficult to find the right balance between CDBG and, of course, the next item, the Human Services General Fund. So we think we've done a pretty good job of that. And I would like to thank my fellow commissioners who worked hard, asked a lot of hard questions, and sometimes we had to agree to disagree, and we did it amicably. And I'm just so fortunate to be able to work with each and every one of them. And thank you, staff, for being amazing and helping us walk through those hard discussions and figuring out ways in which we could make sure we meet at the greatest needs of those here in the city. So with that, I will conclude my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Any other public comment on that?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Walsh, do you have a motion?
Yes, first, before the motion, I would like to personally thank also the members of the Human Services Commission, Cynthia Ricks McAtan, who just spoke, and also I see that Vivian Alexander and Aaron Walsh and Betty Taylor are personally here, and want to thank them for that effort. But I move approval of the 20...
Actually, Councilmember.
Excuse me. I move to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion, a second to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The public hearing is now closed. Councilmember Walsh.
I move approval of the 2023 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that point? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that matter passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. And you're here for the next item, item B, to 2023-2024 Human Services General Fund Grants. I will now open the public hearing, and Sarah, for the staff report.
Yes, and I will share my screen before I start. Okay, thank you again. So this evening I will be presenting our 2023 through 2024 Human Services General Fund grant recommendations. The policy question before you is, should City Council approve the Human Services Commission 2023-2024 Human Services General Fund grant recommendations in the amount of $712,000. This is just an overview. I'm not going to go into any level of detail. We have two standard grant city processes. Did it not share? I clicked it, I promise. I apologize. I did not double click. I am struggling tonight. So we have two regular grant processes, the first of which is the Human Services General Fund, and then our CDBG, which you just heard about. We have one common application for those two items. CDBG also has a second application for the capital that we'll talk this evening through the shared application process. And you'll see some reference to CDBG just in terms of how it rounds out our three strategy areas, but this will specifically approve the general fund grants. Additionally, we'll have one-time funding like ARPA, which we'll discuss later this evening. The city has three City Council adopted strategy areas, the first of which is to address basic needs such as housing, health, and hunger. The second is promote individual and community safety through prevention, intervention, and crisis services. And then the third is promote services that foster stability and self-sufficiency for families and individuals. In 2023, we had a grant theory that opened for about 6 weeks. It opened in March and closed in early May. We received 82 applications for funding. That excludes one application that subsequently withdrew. They intended only to submit one, and that was removed. Of those 82, 4 were incomplete, and 78 moved forward for evaluation. The 78 complete on-time applications included a total of $1,711,351 in requested funds. This was the highest cumulative request that the city has had in our grant-making history. The Human Services Commission participated in a 3-part training in the spring. Each commissioner read and evaluated all 78 applications. In the past, we've used a few different methods, but this was the method to approach that fair and equal process and ensure that the scores were fair across the board. And then the recommendations started from the quantitative average score and ensured a balance across the 3 strategy areas. We do have a 40% requirement on strategy 1 in addressing basic needs. The commission made 2 sets of recommendations. So if you're looking at the recommendations that are in your packet, one set included an increase in allocations, bringing the total general fund grant allocation to $712,000. The other set is based on the prior funding amount of $536,000 per year. And then finally, the recommendations are forwarded to City Council with a unanimous vote from the Human Services Commission. Of the requested increase, $56,000 was included in the proposed 2023-2024 budget, leaving a total of $123,000 unfunded. For option 1 to be funded, the Human Services Commission is recommending $123,000 of the ARPA Social Services funding to be used to fill that gap and bring that total up to that $712,000. Option 2 would not include ARPA funding and would reduce the amount and number of grants. We would do a prorated allocation, based on council approval this evening, ensuring that no grant goes below the $5,000 minimum or below their recommended funding at that $536,000 level. There is one correction on the slide from what is in your packet. I had an error in my numbers, so you'll see it corrected in this grid here, where it reflects that $589,000 of general fund for both options 1 and 2, and the $123,000 per year of ARPA funds if you move option 1 forward. Overview, I'm not going to go through all of this, so I'll do a higher level overview of funding by strategy area. Strategy Area 1 includes a variety of programs that provide medical, behavioral health, dental services, food banks, rent assistance, homeless outreach, and day services. It's a total of $374,000 in general funds and $56,000 in CDBG. It's 52% of our direct social service funding. Strategy Area 2, promote individual and community safety, includes a variety of crisis services, domestic violence services, school-based programs, and that's a total of $156,300 in general fund and 19% of our funding. And then finally, Strategy Area 3 fosters stability. It includes a number of programs for employment and training, refugee and immigrant services, senior services at 27% of the funding total, $161,000 in general fund, $60,000 in CDBG. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions that you have.
All right, council, any questions? Councilmember Dovey?
Is this the time to ask questions about how the funding was put together in the document of who's getting what? Is that?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So before I make my comment, I'll tell you my bias. Having worked in human services as on these committees for many years, I have a bias towards the ones that don't have a lot of staff people and the money goes directly to the people. And I'll disclose that I was the president of the Federal Way Community Caregivers Network for many years. I'm not associated with them at all now, but I know how that works. And when I look at the adoption, we have more money or less money than we need. I hear that. I know we need to give it to as many as we can. But I see so many names here I've never seen before, and one that we've funded for years, the Federal Way Caregivers Network, that has no staff, that the money goes all directly to the people. It's for rent, it's for food, it's for vouchers we didn't even consider funding. So, again, I'm biased, but I want to know why we made that choice when somebody who's been in Federal Way since, I don't know, 40 years, that's been giving back to the community, that we've always funded, got a goose egg.
Well, I'm biased too. I think they're a great organization and provide a great service. They had, and generally we prefer not to speak about a specific
Well, I'm
application.
very
but
specific.
Yes.
So-
In this particular case, they did have blank sections of the application, and it did not score well in evaluation as a result when there were not service units or resident numbers to compare with the budget, and that's a significant portion of evaluation. So they were a full 5 points below the lowest funded application. And we did spend a bit of time with the Caregiving Network, and they are volunteer-based in advance of the application, following the last cycle where they didn't have the score that they thought they should have. And they did a lot of work on their narrative. It had a lot of improvements. Our forms have not changed. They were prepared to go into the application, had additional technical assistance, which we offer to any nonprofit that is interested in applying for funds. And it still came in with blanks on the form. So unfortunately, it was based on that quantitative score. They were not at the level for this funding round.
So I understand. An organization that gives all the money back, has food distribution in this city, has meals all over the community, that 100% of the money goes to the people in need, were not qualified because they filled the form out incorrectly? Is that what it is?
We do use an RFP process, and that is correct.
I got it. I'm just asking.
Yes.
40 years of history didn't play into that at all. I mean, I understand you're the messenger, and don't take it personally, please don't. I just want to know just want to be educated before I vote.
It is a fair process in looking at the information that is presented in the application. And we do not, or have not historically done a direct allocation process, so using that score-based evaluation, that is correct. That
Sarah, how much were they asking for?
25,000, that's what they've been I mean, they've been getting that forever. Last year, they got 9, I think. But I look at some of these, who I've never heard of in Federal Way forever, that got funded way more than what they did. And so anyway, I'm biased. I'm disclosing that.
Well, and it's important. So, Sarah, were you concerned? Can you talk to, when you saw this, and they've got a long history, what did you think? I mean, you've talked about the process with the form. Is this a matter of form over substance, or what's your analysis of this?
No, we did, so we talked both with law and multiple times with the organization. In terms of the form, we looked across other applications. We did not see that same deficiency in application. Federal Way Community Caregiving Network has actually completed that form correctly in all past applications. So it was an oversight on the part of the organization that we do not provide the opportunity for other organizations to go back in, and we don't reopen our application. So it's what is submitted as part of that RFP process. And they did not, in this case, since they didn't include any information on service units or number of people being served, it does not score well when we're looking at the budget, and typically they would as a volunteer-based program. There was not information to evaluate in those situations.
Let's talk about this tomorrow in our meeting, depending on how this goes. I can't presuppose which way the vote's going to go, but I think, the Council President, you had to...
Well, I was just considering, sometimes we have money left over at the end of the year. We try to decide where to put it, and that might be a good time to discuss that at that time. I wouldn't want to overstep the bounds on this, because that's been...
I'm not suggesting we change the rules how we do things, but when I look at, again, I'm biased. I've been there, I've served their president, I know those people, I've worked at the food, where they give the food out to people in Federal Way. It's like the best bang for the buck in our city, because nobody gets paid, there's no staff, everything goes to the people in need. And
so it's all volunteers?
It's all volunteers. And we always talk about, we want volunteers, and we're telling one of our 40-year volunteer companies that, hey, you filled out your form wrong, and that's on them, I get it. But we're not, I don't know, it just rubs me wrong.
Sarah, does it sound like their mission has changed, or that I guess, what was it about I hate to put you on the spot, but, we are talking about public dollars here. What was it about the form that was not, that...
Nothing has changed. They actually did it correctly, again, using the same system, including in 2020 when we started COVID. It was complete and accurate. It was an oversight. In talking with Linda, she said this was an oversight on our part. And
what was an oversight?
Not filling it out. Not filling out the forms on our service units and budget. So.
Okay. Well, okay, go ahead. Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah.
And then actually, Councilmember Walsh, if I can interrupt you for a second. After that, we've got Councilmember Asefa Dawson, and then the Deputy Mayor. And then, Councilmember Tran as well.
Yeah.
Councilmember Walsh?
Would it be possible to, we have some ARPA funds that'll be distributed later on that there will be applications for. Would it be possible to basically help compensate for their oversight by making sure that some of those ARPA funds yet to be distributed are earmarked for the Federal Way Community Caregiving Network?
That would fall outside of our standard grant-making policies and process. It would be something I would defer to legal if that's something that council can do on professional services.
So as a general goal, we try to have a standardized process for fairness. That said, council can appropriate the ARPA money any way council sees fit. So the process is meant to create clarity and transparency, but it's not binding on council. So
Right.
if you want to come back and address this through ARPA funds, you absolutely can do that. I would encourage you tonight to not, this is a very elaborate and you saw exhaustive process that the Human Services Commission took, and trying to fiddle with it at the last minute would unbalance a lot of that. But I do think there is room in the ARPA funds to address this.
Well, let's, 1 second. Excuse me, please. We done?
If I could say one more thing before or my councilman jumps in. I don't want to change the rules, because if we start changing the rules at dais, that's the wrong message. So I support the Human Service Commission and what they did. They worked hard. We got a great plan. But I just wanted to make sure that I brought that up. And
Okay. We've got Councilmember Sefa Dawson, the Deputy Mayor, Councilmember Tran, and then Councilmember Norton. So Councilmember Sefa Dawson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Sarah, for the presentation. And I want to also thank the commission for all the hard work that they put into this. As a former Human Services Manager and Human Services Commission member, I know it's a daunting task that the commission has to do, and so it's a lot of work. That said, I think my question was basically answered by Ryan a moment ago about setting a precedence, and I do understand what Councilmember Dovey is saying for sure, but you all said it. I don't think we can do anything about it right now because we have charged the commission to determine and bring forward what their recommendation is, and so I appreciate their hard work, and I don't think we should touch it. However, I also was going to suggest maybe ARPA funds, and so that's what Ryan said. And also, this takes me to my next point. Human Services Commission has not had enough funding, and the request has gone up, like we just saw. Number of agencies that apply have gone up, and they also have those needs, really, the cost has risen. So I think it's time that we as council consider increasing the funding level that we offer to the Human Services Commission, because this is a 2-year funding cycle also that we're voting on and that we're passing. So it would be great if we make that consideration to support human services at a higher level of funding. Thank you very much.
All right, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. I agree with Councilmember Sefa Dawson that we need to be supporting our human services by increasing the funding. I also, when I was on the Arts Commission, we gave money out to the performing groups. And one time we had a group that didn't follow the rules, and we couldn't give them funding as they requested because they didn't fill out the application correctly, even though staff offered to help over and over, and they had filled out the application many times before. So it's a difficult decision, but I do believe that if we can have them apply for the ARPA funding. And of course, I've heard Sarah mention that anyone who needs help with filling out applications will get that help. Staff has always offered that for grants, and I think that's the way to go. But I do not support changing it tonight. That would set up a bad precedent, but we do need to hopefully get them the application for the ARPA funding.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Tran, and then Councilmember Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Sarah. I think I agree with all the council members already said about changing the process. I did not personally involve during this funding round, but I have been involved in evaluating grant funding, outside of the city. So I know it is a very difficult job. And I just want to voice my support for the commission I defended your decision because, I mean, you have to look at each and every application and you use a standard format, and whoever make it to a certain point will get the funding, and whoever did not will not get it. It's a fair process, and I agree that we as a council should not use our authority to, change the process, because to me, it's a fairness. I mean, if we want to reconsider for one agency, what about other agencies that did not get funded? Are they going to get a second look? So I just worry that we send the wrong message to the community. So,
All right, thank you. Councilmember Norton?
Thank you, Mayor Farrell. And thank you, Sarah, for your comprehensive and detailed explanation of how you came about with your decision. And I just want to reiterate what Councilmember Sefa Dawson, Deputy Mayor Honda, and Councilmember Tran expressed, that it'd probably be best to follow the advice and the hard work that has already been done instead of making changes on the dais. And I also think that we do not commit enough funding to this important part of our job as city leaders, to give back to the people and support our nonprofits and help those who are in need. So I'd like everybody to just think about that and give it some thought as to how we can support Sarah and her department and give them more funding, because they need it. If you look at their budget, it's incredibly small, and it's not something a city of our size should be doing. We need to look at increasing that. However, we can get the funds allocated to that department. And I'll stop now. Thank you, Sarah, for your presentation.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we do have the two comments. Aaron Walsh and then Betty Taylor. Betty, did you want to speak again on this issue? All right, okay.
Another thank you, Mayor Farrell and City Council members. Once again, my name is Aaron Walsh. I'm on the Human Services Committee. I just want to say thank you so much for all your work to really consider the Human Services General Fund grants recommendations and make the important decision. I love seeing the conversation tonight and how clearly everyone here cares about human services, as do all the members of the commission that made these recommendations. I just want to highlight, as Sarah discussed, there's the choice of either funding at the lower level or the higher level tonight. I hope that everyone votes to approve the $712,000 level. We really put a lot of thought into, if we had just a little bit more funding, which organizations would we want to increase funding to, which organizations would we want to fund that we could not fund otherwise, and we're really hopeful that that higher level of funding is approved tonight. And just in general, as the conversation tonight has demonstrated, we all on the commission really felt that it'd be great to have more funding. To be honest, that sense of loss and regret and wishing that we could fund all of the organizations that applied was really strong for everyone. Everyone that we had to say no to in our recommendations, we really wish we could have funded, because everyone who applied is really doing great work in federal ways. So just to support that continuing conversation about ways to increase funding for the next time around. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, Betty? And as she makes her way to the podium, do we have any other public comment?
Cynthia Ricks McAtan has her hand raised.
Good evening again. So I'm just getting kind of burned out, just listening, because the work that we put into reading all these applications, 78 applications. We all had 78 applications that took a lot of time and energy and months. That took a lot of meetings. That took a lot of sleepless nights. But we busted our butt for every last one of those applications. We read each one, line for line. And we discussed what was right and what was wrong, what was needed and what was not needed. We have to go, everybody gets treated the same. Everybody gets treated the same. The rules are the rules. And everybody has to follow the same rules. What we need right now is more money. The M-O-N-E-Y. 78 applications. How many are we going to get next year? It might be 100. It might be 200. And we can't not survive with a $700,000 budget. So right now, let me advocate for the Human Service Commission. Let me advocate for them. Let me advocate for the communities, for the nonprofits that are applying for this funding. Let me advocate for those that may even get turned down. You have to look at why do you get turned down? The whys. What did they miss? We had to wear eyes behind our head. But we worked hard and diligent. And there's no regrets at all. So it's embarrassing to sit down with a group of people and figure out where the funds are going to go when you ain't got the funds. So when you ain't got the funds, somebody's going to have to get cut. Who wants to get cut? But it happens because of funding, the lack of funding that this city should have, but this city does not have. But this city should be reaching out to try to get the funds to bring into this community. How do you do that? Who has the know-how? Who has the know-how and the knowledge to go out and ask for those funds that are necessary to fund these agencies? Because we did a good work.
All right, thank you. All right.
Cynthia Ricks McAtan.
Good evening. I'm coming to you again, Chair of the Human Services Commission. Again, I want to thank my fellow commissioners in their hard work. The recommendation before the City Council, it represents the highest scoring applications. Our evaluations and the recommendation process was helped to prepare for a fair and balanced set of recommendations across all of the strategy areas, while prioritizing our local access to services and preventing gaps based on the applications received and the needs that we know are happening in our community. At the end of the day, it's all about meeting the needs of the residents here in our city, especially those that are often left out and have minimal resources. We did not have enough funds to meet the needs of all of our residents. We did the best that we could with a fair and equitable process to reach as many as we could. I am asking the City Council on behalf of the commission to please, as Commissioner Walsh has already stated, and as wonderful Commissioner Betty just spoke about, to consider option one, higher funding, and that as you go forward in your budgeting process, to consider increasing the funding for human services general fund dollars. Not for the commission, but for the residents of the city of Federal Way, the city of opportunity. There are lots of people who don't have much opportunity here without additional services provided by community-based organizations. And it is our job at the Human Services Commission to make sure that we have a fair and equitable process to meet the needs of those residents. That's why you appointed us. So thank you very much for respecting the process but more importantly, for considering tonight funding at a higher level so that we can meet the needs of the most vulnerable here in our city. Thank you so much.
All right, any others?
No, Mayor, I don't have anyone else signed
All right,
up.
thank you. All right, Councilmember Walsh, do you have a motion?
I move to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion to close the public meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. It's unanimous. Public meeting is closed. Councilmember Walsh?
I move approval of option 1 of the 2023-2024 Human Services General Funds Grant.
Second.
It's been a motion and a
Second.
second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passed unanimously. Sarah, would you please reach out to the Community Caregiving Network and let them know that they should probably reach out with a request for ARPA funding and guide them through that process. All right, thank you. Okay, now move on to council business number 9A, confirmation of Economic Development Director Tanya Carter. Staff report by Brian Davis, our interim city administrator.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. It's my honor to introduce Tanya Carter as our nominee for Economic Development Director. As background, in April earlier this year, our former Economic Development Director, Tim Johnson, resigned for a county manager position in Oregon. We sought the Prothman Company to help in our search for a new Economic Development Director, and we were able to form a good group of final candidates. We had 2 interview panels, a staff panel, and then a community panel with members of the council, specifically Deputy Mayor Honda, Councilmember Erica Norton, and we also had Chamber CEO Becca Martin on the panel as well. And then the candidates were also favored with a tour around the city, guided by Planning Manager Keith Niven and Senior Planner Cheney Skatson. We had a good group, but it was, in our opinion, the winner was clear, that Tanya was the leading candidate. As background, Tanya is trilingual. She speaks German and Spanish as well as English. She earned a BA in economics from the American University in Washington, D.C., and holds a real estate investment banking certificate from the European School of Business. Most recently, Tanya has worked as an economic development strategist for the city of SeaTac, as an economic development officer for the city of Auburn, and as marketing manager for Brooks Running, and as business development and marketing for Pacific Program Management. Tanya has also owned and operated the Missing Link brand engineers in Dubai, Munich, and Seattle, and served as an economic development advisor for GAA Marta Consulting in Dubai. Her personal hobbies include National Ski Patrol, mountain biking, and concert violin. And just my own observation in the interviews, she was thoroughly prepared for the interviews. Every question that the candidates didn't know the questions ahead of time, but every question that we asked her, she had examples of her work ready to go that she was able to show the interview panel. She had gone around and interviewed businesses within the city prior to the interview. We actually learned a lot about our own economic development picture as a result of interviewing Tanya. So it was great to see that kind of initiative, and it was what we believe will be a foreshadowing of what accomplishments will be made by Tanya in this position. So we're excited to present her as a nominee for your confirmation tonight. And Mayor, do you want her to come up?
Yeah, Tanya, please come on up. And while you're making your way there, while you're making your way there, I just want to say that we're so glad that she applied. She did a tremendous job during the interviews. Would you tell us a little bit about your Paramount deal, Paramount Studios? That I found very interesting, and so being a movie fan and an entertainment fan that I am, but we were just really blown away with her experience and really your can-do attitude with regard to reaching out to the local businesses and focus on the community. So with that set up, Tanya, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, Council President Koshmar, and also Deputy Mayor, who is not with us but on the video. Did you want me to speak to Paramount, or I wasn't?
Sure, yeah, just a little bit about the Paramount deal.
So I was the director for GAA Marta Consulting in Dubai, And as such, we were hired by various governments, regional governments around the world. And in this particular case, it was the regional government in southern Spain. And they were interested in kind of ramping up their tourism in that region to compete with, to the north, Barcelona, and to the south, Valencia. And so they retained us to help them figure out what to do. And we engaged Paramount Studios and had negotiations with them to see what the possibilities would be in southern Spain to develop a theme park for the region down there. So that was what I was involved in. And ultimately, we helped facilitate a deal to represent Paramount resorts and hotels around the world. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Great. Anything else to share?
No, I'm just really excited. I think I am really kind of in sponge mode now, so I'm really interested to learn, to talk to all the council members, to talk to our businesses, the organizations in the city, and really hoping that I can bring some of my experience to help enrich the economic vitality and well-being of the city. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Tanya.
Yep.
Council, any questions? All right. Thank you Council President? Okay. I know, normally when they turn on their microphones, it's either they're ready to vote or they want to say something, and sometimes I'm a little quick on that. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Councilmember Kochmar.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to confirm Tanya Carter as the City of Federal's Economic Development Director.
Second.
There's been a motion, a second. I should say Council President Kochmar. Been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, you're official. Congratulations. Council, this person's going to be an ambassador for us all over the country and it sounds like around the world. Let's get a picture taken with all the council members out in front. And maybe actually, should we also maybe do it in front of the screen so we capture the other council members? Yeah, I know Becca tried to do that, but exactly. All right, let's get down there.
Let's do it actually on the ramp there so we can get the council.
Okay. We'll do another.
There we go. I can't see Councilman, or I can't see the deputy mayor. Okay. See here.
Chin down, look straight.
But we'll do it. All right. Now can we get one from the city seal?
Oh, okay, great. Okay, let's do that. Okay. We're going to take all of us down in front.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, no, that's okay, guys. I'll be on the.
All right, here we go. All right, everyone smile. They zoom into this a little bit. Here we go. One more.
Congratulations.
All right. Oh, you want it, all right. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I look forward to getting on your calendar, boy.
¿Y dónde aprendió español?
Muy bien. Bueno, muy bien.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, that's official. All right, item B, resolution 2023 fee schedule. Staff report from Steve Groom, our finance director. Steve?
Agenda setting note, in future, I'd like to not follow her. I anticipate she's going to be tough to follow. So this, this agenda item is a technical accounting fix. It's a budget.
No deals with Paramount Studios to brag about?
I got nothing, and I'm not even going to try to do PowerPoint. In the time in the time I normally fiddle with the setup, I can be done here. Updating the city fee schedule, it's an annual recurring routine process. In your packet, you have a memo that explains the why and most of the reason why we adjust our fees. It's it's keeping up with inflation. This is formula driven. Typically, they're tied to the consumer price index. The kindest and fairest philosophy is small and frequent adjustments so we avoid large catch-up spikes. In your memo, you've got a 9-page spreadsheet. I need to apologize for the small font. I think in the future we could probably make it a 12-page schedule with larger font, but it involves all of the quite a few fees in community development, public works, parks. And in that schedule, it shows what the current fee is and what the fee will be in 2023. For citizens that are watching, the city does not try to make money. Revenue for the city never covers the costs generally. If anything, nothing government does makes money. If anything does make money, the private sector would do it, of course. So the best we can do is we try to partially recover our costs in keeping with inflation. And I say partially recover our costs because everything that the city does is partially paid for by taxes that are paid for by all citizens. So what we're doing here, fees are in our effort to have at least part of the cost borne by the actual users of each service. And what we are, and while we try to keep pace with inflation, if we were to not try to keep up with inflation, what that would do is that would shift the cost of our services to all citizens rather than the users of the services. So in that spirit, we try to balance our funding of the costs of what we do fairly. I know that all staff in all departments are on the edge of their seats to know whether you're going to pass this. Auditors at the end of the year are going to check to make sure that we follow the proper process. And with that, that's as interesting as I can make it. Staff recommends approval of the resolution.
Very good. All right, council, any questions? Councilmember Walsh?
I just have, but just for my own edification, a couple of questions. One, with the fee schedule in section 10, item F, concurrency. What is a concurrency fee? Just so that I know, and I suspect there's members of the public out there that don't know what it is either.
I don't think I know. Anybody know?
I don't feel so bad about not knowing now.
EJ?
Are you looking at I don't have the fee schedule in front of me. Are you looking at transportation concurrency?
This is section 10, development review fee is item E, and then under that is F, concurrency. And no, this is not under this is, section 10 is public works.
It has to do with trips. How many trips?
Yeah, so concurrency is a program. I'm pulling it up while we're looking at it. Is an analysis of the overall city transportation network and a determination if any type of, especially larger development, is going to have impacts beyond their frontage. So the key things we're looking at are intersections and signals, which may be discrete from directly in front of their property. So like a example would be if you have a large scale development somewhere and there's the traffic signal 3 blocks away restricts the amount of flow that you can't actually get the cars from the development at rush hour through that traffic signal. So it's a modeling exercise that the city performs that goes and looks at the entire network in our model based on kind of what developers are proposing.
So is that so with the number of trips, is that the number of trips during construction, the number of trips after it's built?
Upon completion.
And then is that daily trips, weekly trips? What?
So it's peak hour trips.
Peak hour trips, okay. Okay, all right. And then one other question on traffic impact fees. It seems to me as though that some of the traffic impact fees, I certainly understand the need for them, but is the level of our traffic impact fees, is that comparable to what other cities in the areas have, or is it something that is higher that is perhaps hindering development that we'd like to have here in the community?
No, it's substantially lower than surrounding communities.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right. Very good. Councilmember Tran, do you have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the proposed resolution.
I second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Matter passes unanimously. Thank you. Item C, purchase of Safe City cameras. Staff report from Thomas Fitchner, our IT director.
Good evening, Mayor, Council President, Deputy Mayor, and fellow council members. I'm preparing this so that I'm going to get to that presentation. I don't really have a presentation. I just have a little excerpt that I'm going to share of the staff report just a little bit later. So good evening. Long story short, in 2018, we purchased 28 of these H4 model Avigilon pan tilt zoom cameras. We have observed to date 20 out of the 28 have failed, all with the same error, pan motor failure. And they all have the little chunks of plastic in the bottom of the dome. Now, they came with a 3-year warranty, and Avigilon was happily replacing them under 3-year warranty for us. But they're out of warranty. They expired last year. And Avigilon's no longer doing this, and their support department denies there's ever a problem. So I've been in long talks with various different contacts at Avigilon to try and figure out, get to the bottom of this, because I don't want to be left with all these cameras, especially when we get further on down the road here, that keep failing, which we currently have a few that are dead. So they want to make it right. If I was able to get to the right person, the right time, and they want to try and make it right for us. So before council tonight is approval of purchase of 3 types of cameras. 35 H5 PTZ cameras, which is the next model up. They have a 5-year warranty now instead of a 3-year, so that also is better. They include more advanced features than the H4. And the city already has 9 of these H5s, and we have no problems to date. And we've had them for a couple years. And just for note, the H4 models failed within a couple of years of having them. So we started experiencing issues. And then also with the addition, with the delta between 28 and 35 cameras, we'll also be replacing some of our older Axis cameras, which are between 8 and 10 years, sometimes a little bit more old. And that's about normal because the 8-10-year life cycle on a piece of equipment, especially a camera, is about normal for failures. And so we're starting to see those the Axis cameras fail as well. In addition to that, there's 5 360-degree or multi-sensor cameras, as we call them, and that's for spare parts or to replace one that has actually failed. And then 1 intercom camera, which is for our 24-hour call box down here, because that intercom system is that was put in as part of the building remodel in 2004 is now failed. So we're just trying to kind of play catch up on some of these things as well. So now to bring up this piece here, I'm going to share my screen and bring this up. So the deal that Avigilon is willing to do for us is as stated. So you can see, hopefully this comes out okay on your screens. You can see the breakdown. The total MSRP price, which we never pay MSRP, is $129,544.32. WLS is the Washington Learning Source. That's a contract that we are on and we're able to procure from. That's usually our price. So when we go to our vendor and we buy off that contract, we would pay about $105,000, which is about 18% off. So that's pretty decent. Avigilon's willing to give us a one-time discount of $19,000, as shown here. So that brings the new subtotal down to $86,283, which is a 33.39% discount off of MSRP, or an additional 18% off of the WLS pricing that we normally get. Plus tax, $8,000, and for a grand total of $94,998. So, due to the time-sensitive nature of this, that's why it's before you tonight instead of going through the FedRec committee, because of the offer that we're able to finally get from them, in addition to trying to get this equipment before the end of the year for our purchasing policies. So, previous Safe City equipment, this is being funded from replacement reserves or equipment reserves. There's a request before you tonight as part of the budget adjustment. So your approval of this particular purchase would also approve the appropriation of the $95,000 required to make the purchase, and that would appropriate the $95,000 to the 2022 IT operating budget to cover this cost. So know that was a lot. If you have any questions, happy to answer.
Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Thomas. The new camera will come with a 5 years
Yes.
warranty.
Yes.
I wonder if we should buy extended warranty if they offer them?
So generally, we've had Avigilon equipment in this building since 2010, and we've never had a failure rate of this nature. If we had, I wouldn't be going with them anymore. I wouldn't be buying them. So this is kind of one of those glitch or unprecedented things that happened. I've talked to other vendors or resellers and other customers, and it's the H4 is a common issue. So again, I think Avigilon doesn't want to admit to that publicly, but they're trying to do well here to try and cover our costs and our inconvenience for having to replace these as well. So
thank you.
All right, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. At the PIC meeting the other day, there is discussion of cameras in other cities. There's something called the Flock camera that some other cities are purchasing.
yeah.
But there was discussion that cameras are now allowed by the legislature to be near parks to monitor the roads in front of the streets in front of the parks. Have we thought about adding cameras to any of our parks to monitor that?
We already have cameras inside of several parks: Celebration Park, Town Square Park, French Lake Park, Steel Lake Park. All have cameras today.
So what was said at the PIC, and I haven't had time to confirm this, that cameras that are located by parks, the legislature gets part of the funding from those cameras, part of the fee when someone is caught doing something wrong and is fined. Do you know anything about that?
These are not traffic cameras. These are just safety cameras throughout these are not cameras that we're citing people from. I mean.
Oh, no. These are not,
Oh, okay.
stop
Yeah.
sign or, no.
Yeah.
Okay, so the cameras we were talking about at PIC were on the streets in front of the city parks.
Right.
Yeah, photo enforcement
Okay.
cameras.
Photo enforcement. Yeah,
Right.
I couldn't think of the phrase either. Yeah.
And I couldn't either. I was struggling.
Right.
Yeah.
Because now they're only allowed by schools and at intersections, correct? And parks at this point,
Yeah,
apparently.
these cameras are just for the safety. Like, remember, we added a bunch at 356th and 21st, at Campus Drive, and at essentially the back doors of Federal Way. Key location intersections. Actually, we in an area up north, we added one in a residential area, 288th and Military. So where we've got safety issues, traffic and safety issues. 272nd Pacific Highway, I was actually just looking at those cameras there, all throughout our downtown. When we had demonstrations 2 years ago, actually, I sat for 5 hours in front of a wall of TVs downstairs for 5.5 hours and looked at all the cameras in our downtown to make sure that demonstration didn't go sideways after Seattle had burned and looting occurred in Bellevue. So we've got cameras all over our community. In fact, actually, the coverage we had of our downtown was very, very good, to the point where they could zoom in on certain things. So very helpful. And we actually, we were actually, right after management team, not this week, but last week, we actually pulled one of the cameras at 272nd and Pacific Highway and looked and tried to, we were actually able to figure out where a robbery suspect had fled. And that footage was given to the detectives off those cameras. So, and actually, remember there was a box, an electrical box, that was damaged on Pacific Highway and 312th, or I think it was 312th and Pacific Highway, where we were able to watch an individual, watch the person who actually did the damage. And then there's another instance, remember on 336th and 13th, when the bus stop was burned to the ground, we were actually able to go back. We've got a camera there at 336th and 13th, and we watched exactly how that happened. So we've got cameras stationed throughout. How many cameras throughout the city?
I was just checking, I think there's 281 physical cameras, but a lot of those are multi-sensors. And of course, CCTV cameras inside buildings too. So
Yeah.
it's significant. We've got over 450-ish views, I think, 430 views.
Yeah, so, and for anybody who's, I want to let people know that, we really heavily invested in these after the spate of shootings in 2016, in which several federal citizens were gunned down, and we wanted to make sure that if anything like that ever happened again, we'd have license plates, and our detectives utilize this very importantly. I will tell you, Susan, that it is kind of, John Hunt, is John Hutton in the room? Sometimes when I'm at Town Square Park and I call him and I say, hey, John, there's something going on. He's like, yeah, I see you on the camera. So he watches the camera at Town Square Park and can see me there. So anyway, I just want to let everybody know we've got good coverage around town to make sure that our community is safe. I think I know where most of them are. All right, any other questions? Okay, Councilmember Tran.
Okay, with that, I move approval of purchase of Safe City cameras as presented.
Second that.
Second.
It's been a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, they pass unanimously. Thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Item D, ARPA Social Services and Business Supports Proposal. Staff report from Sarah Bridgeford.
Okay. I did, third time's charm. I got it this evening. So Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor Honda, Council President Kochmar, and members of the council, thank you so much for having me a third time. This evening we'll be talking about the American Rescue Plan Act Social Services funding. The policy question before you is, should City Council approve the proposal for ARPA Social Services and Business Supports as presented? A little bit of background. In October, City Council allocated or approved the funds in the amount of $3.75 million for social services and business supports. Generally, this came from two requests, one that was $3 million for social services and then $750,000 for business supports. The proposed plan retains this division of funds and recommends deferring economic development until the new economic development director, Tanya, is on board with the city. This plan will specifically, as a result, speak to social services funding and the process that we're proposing to City Council. The priority areas that are being proposed are based on data throughout the pandemic, as well as looking forward at recovery and how we can better prepare as a community for hopefully future, not pandemics, but future situations. So coming out of the pandemic, that we have both opportunities to address immediate needs and then look to the future as well. So with that, we see a few priorities listed on the screen, starting with housing stability and basic needs, with a recommended allocation of $800,000. Financial literacy at $200,000, and I'll talk to each of these in a little bit more detail here in just a minute. And then $1 million for youth programming, $650,000 for employment and education, and then a couple other things with the option one recommendation for Human Services General Fund that included a total of $246,000 in ARPA funds that essentially is already promised for the general fund grants. We are recommending additionally $100,000 to fund a pilot project for nonprofit facility usage at $50,000 per year for 2023 and 2024. This is responsive to repeated requests as organizations primarily serving youth are looking for locations to deliver that service. Council has heard those requests, and there's a pilot project that we could run in partnership with Parks and Community Services as a division of CD, and we'd be able to do that in both 2023 and 2024. Then if City Council and the city wanted to pursue that in the future as a regular program, this would give us a sense of scope and how we would want that program to be structured in the future what the budget might be, and that could guide other decisions. And then finally, $4,000 for outreach and advertising and legal noticing for any RFPs. I will go through some general concepts. First, though, I'm just looking at general concepts. Programs must be responsive to COVID-19 and its recovery. All of the priority areas do allow specifically for that. We know that housing was one of the biggest needs that we saw, inability to pay rent and utility costs, food. Similarly, coming out of the pandemic, those costs continue to go up. We've seen large increases in rent costs in the city of Federal Way as well as regionally and across the country, but locally we feel that. Same with food costs because of inflation. We want to be able to address those both in recovery and looking forward. Minimum of $50,000 per year would apply for that. It would also apply for the financial literacy. The recommendation is to try to partner with existing programs to the extent possible and maximize what we can do with those funds. There are some programs that we may be able to access. The idea is that we would build an RFP around incentivizing participation in financial literacy, and by doing so, offer additional financial assistance. So if somebody were to come into one of the programs for rent assistance or utility assistance, they would have a 3-day pay or vacate or an eviction or a shut-off notice. They would then be eligible to participate in financial literacy and have a financial incentive to have $100 or something like that towards one of those bills in the future without a shut-off notice or eviction notice. So again, incentivizing an opportunity to improve credit, reduce debt, build assets to better weather emergencies in the future. The third priority area is youth funding, youth programming at $1 million. And that has a specific recommendation from the commission around youth organizations that are local and already have existing connection within the city. And then the fourth category is employment and education. With that one, we are recommending not going out immediately with an RFP, but see if we can do a sub-regional project with other cities that are also looking at something similar. So maximize our dollars, bring something regionally that may be sustained longer into the future. If that doesn't come to fruition, we would then run a process internally at the city. A couple other things that I would note is that for all of these priority areas, it would be prioritizing new or expanded service. One other concept that I didn't mention on the housing stability and basic needs, I think it's akin to the conversation that we had earlier this evening. The Human Services Commission is in support of this, but really looking at maximizing dollars that get into the community, so including a weighted evaluation for that purpose and that no dollars go out. That doesn't exclusively limit a staffed program, but it would provide some additional scores in the evaluation for programs that get the highest percentage of funds into the community. We have done some consultation already. So you'll see on this timeline that through January 6th, we will continue community engagement and outreach. We've been meeting with nonprofits, checking in on needs that they're seeing, as well as just providing some technical assistance, making sure everybody has access to our systems. Additionally, we had the opportunity last week to go to both the Diversity Commission and the Youth Commission. Both great groups of people. I've never attended a youth commission meeting, and it was just a pleasure. They really engaged in the conversation and had some great ideas as we look at that, the potential allocation for youth programming. So we'll incorporate those in our continued community outreach, as well as the application process. One of the things that was presented with the Youth Commission and then to the Human Services Commission is the potential of having youth commissioners join us in either the evaluation or some stage and looking at the applications for the youth programming. So really getting that youth voice in making those decisions that impact the youth in our community. Our plan is then to have finalized RFPs by the start of January, and that we would release those RFPs, a separate RFP for each priority area, and go into an application process through February 17th. We provide technical assistance before the application, not that would be specific to ARPA funds. And then once it opens, it changes what we do a little bit, but we do have technical assistance available. All answers become available to any applicant via the website. The Human Services Commission would have ongoing training. If the Youth Commission or other external evaluators joined us in that process, they would have similar training depending on what component they're evaluating. And that application would close on February 17th. The plan would be to go through an evaluation process, conclude that in March or April, and make recommendations to City Council with the intent of having contracts in place by the end of June to start on January, I'm getting them mixed up, June 1st, July 1st, one of those summer months. But that would be the time. What our hope is that we would be able to have a full year of service in the grant so that we can evaluate performance, make sure that we're hitting performance targets, expenditures. These are reimbursement grants, so that all of the programs would be on track for meeting expenditures by the end of 2026. The reason for that is that if we do any kind of reobligation, we need to do that in the calendar year 2024. And this timeline allows us to do that. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Okay, council, any questions? Councilmember Sefa Dawson.
Thank you, Mayor, again. Thank you, Sarah. So the funds won't be distributed until after May 15th, correct?
After May 15th? That is correct.
So is this going to be like all our other human service funds where they're reimbursable, or do we just give them whatever the level is upfront for them to do the programming?
We do operate on a reimbursement grant basis, but one thing that we'll be looking at and have not had this conversation, that's something that we will consider is if there's an opportunity to either do a monthly reimbursement. Right now, we operate on a quarterly basis, or if we could look at a small portion upfront, but typically, again, this would be a reimbursement basis. So we may look at other options pending law and financial review. I appreciate that question.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just asking because I wonder if there are some organizations that need it upfront and are not able or capable of running their program without those funds. And so I also wonder if that's a question we could put in the application, the RFP. So we know upfront who might need that monthly reimbursement, and then there are others who would still continue to do it on a quarterly basis.
Yes.
That's a suggestion.
Yes, it is something that we have been considering for that very reason. These are, we're recommending larger grants. And because of that, if we have smaller organizations, we want to make sure that we are not putting them in a position to, have any like cash flow issues. And we'll try to problem solve that as we're allowed to within our policies.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Dovey.
I just have a comment on the last little discussion. I mean, when we're going to send out sizable amounts of money to organizations, and if we have to worry about their cash flow, and we haven't vetted that right, I'm concerned that we're hanging people with money that they can't afford to use. And so I would be very cautious of if people that need the money up front to do the service. I think we need
Yes.
to ask, is that really what we want to do?
We will be evaluating the financial, solvency and their ability. But if we look at a quarter at a larger amount, that can feel a little bit different. A lot of funders do monthly reimbursement, so we want to make sure that our program is right-sized for the funding amount.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I don't see any other questions. Council President Kochmar, do you have a motion?
Thank you. Mayor, I move approval of the ARPA Social Services and Business Supports proposal.
I second.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, matter passes. Thank you very much, Sarah. Great job. Okay, discussion on development plan for Town Center 3. Staff report from Keith Niven, Planning Manager. I would note that we had a session today from 5 p.m. to about 6 p.m. on this very issue. But Keith, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening again. Council President Kochmar, Deputy Mayor Honda, and City Council members, Keith Niven, Planning Manager. Try and get my tech right before I start talking. And I'm failing. It's too late in the evening. No, just kidding. All right, here we go. Okay. So this evening, again, we're going to talk about Federal Way TC3 Master Plan. And the policy question in front of the City Council is, should the city release a request for proposals, RFP, to solicit developer proposals for the city-owned TC3 property? Again, the project goal when we started on this was to develop a plan for TC3 that was informed by conversations with the community and the economic realities of the development market in Federal Way. Step one, we sent out an RFP. Step two, we convened a panel of staff and council members and concluded that Via Architecture was our preferred consultant who we executed a contract with. Step three, we hosted a number of community engagement efforts. Step four, we shared the plan with the council, both at the 11/7 Land Use and Transportation Committee as well as the study session earlier this evening. And then step number five, we're hoping to issue the request for proposals. So Town Center, as we discussed earlier this evening, Town Center 1 is the PAC. Town Center 2 is Town Square Park. Town Center 3 is the old Target property with a parking lot. And Town Center 4 is currently being an expansion for the Sound Transit parking garage. The preferred plan for the property is kind of hinges on this Civic Plaza open space area that's going to be east of the PAC. Right now, the plan shows a potential community building on that property that was discussed a little bit earlier this evening. That actual use for that and the decision whether that building is there is a future decision for the City Council. Primarily, there's 3 residential mixed-use buildings on the north side, a potential office or institutional use at the southeast corner, and then a potential hotel site next to the plaza. Looking at the plan in 3 dimensions, as you can see, here's that central community gathering space, Civic Plaza area with a potential building on it. These buildings represent ground floor retail space or non-residential space with residential above. Typically, we're talking about 5 stories over 1 or 2. The parking for each of these is envisioned to be wrapped around so that it's not visible from the exterior or the street, but they would each have their own parking. This is an office building. It would have parking underneath it. The hotel would have parking underneath, as would the plaza, potentially a 450 to 600 stall parking garage underneath the plaza, which would serve both the PAC and the community as public parking. Looking at it from east to west, this is 23rd Avenue in the foreground. And again, just some other views of what the preferred plan looks like. This is north to south from Hillside Plaza. And this is looking north up 21st Avenue to the plaza space with a potential building and an iconic sign, creating that kind of visual terminus that would anchor our downtown. Another view of that. And the options and recommendation, options considered were move forward with releasing the request for proposals for TC3, or do not move forward with releasing the request for proposals and provide direction to staff. The mayor's recommendation is option 1, to move forward with issuing the request for proposals. And with that, I will ask if there are any questions.
All right. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. in the RFP, we have a request for the developer or developers to tear down the Target building, or are we going to be doing that? And do we know what that's going to cost?
Good questions. So right now, the building is there. I believe there was an effort to look at the city taking it down due to it being an attractive nuisance. If that doesn't happen, by the time we're looking at proposals in February, we can have a conversation with developers about that. I'm under the impression from conversations with EJ that there is a desire to move that forward sooner rather than later. So I might defer to EJ on that for maybe a little bit of detail.
Yeah, so we tentatively have that scheduled to go to LUTC at the December meeting. We did get the analysis completed that you had previously asked about for the value impacts to the property of removing it, and would it effectively pencil to remove it and sell and make that money up? And the answer to that question was yes. But the full briefing will be at the LUTC meeting in December. And then yes, as of right now, it is slated for a request to council to authorize demolition, or requesting to go out to bids for demolition of that building.
Okay, thank you. And then I just want to say that when over the years since the property was purchased, I always envisioned businesses up there and not necessarily housing. And I was surprised to find out that the only thing that developers really wanted to build was housing up there. So, I'm sure that the public may be concerned about that. And I just want to say that wasn't my vision. It probably wasn't many other council members' visions either. But we have to respond to what a developer is going to do, because we're not going to be developing the property. A developer will be doing that. So, thank you.
Well, they would do it, the only way that we're going to sell it to developers if they agree to do what we want to have done. And so that would include likely potentially a hotel, retail, a whole variety of services, not just, so whoever, buys it from, we have the ability to basically, through an agreement, dictate what goes there. So.
I understand.
Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Dovey?
I just have a comment, because there'll be more discussion, but I want to thank Mr. Walker for bringing this to us this afternoon in his public comment. I mean, I'm not 100% sure that this is what a developer's going to bring to us and say, hey, this is a great idea. But man, if we own the other piece of the property, this would be a great idea. So, anyway, but I want to make sure we recognize the work that's put in, and the citizens have come forward with different ideas, and our staff's gone out to public comment, and who knows, maybe we'll get some developer says, hey, this is something we can work in, and I think we're open to whatever we can do to make the property valuable to the city.
That's right. Okay, thank you. With that, Councilmember Dovey, do you have a motion, or do you?
I'm ready to make a motion, unless anybody else has anything to say.
Anybody else have anything to say on this issue? Councilmember Dovey?
Okay, first of all, I want to thank everybody, Deputy Mayor Honda, Councilmember Walsh, the staff, for spending, almost a year together talking about this, and the 20-plus years prior that this has been before the council on what we're going to do with downtown. We have spent, $40–50 million. This is going to be a catalyst once we get through this next year for where we're going. So I'd like to move that we approve the approval of the city issuing a request for proposals for the city-owned TCC property, and that we get moving as fast as we can to get those responses back.
I second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, matter passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, great job. Actually, Keith and Cheney, it was funny that you were also involved in Tanya's tour around the city. I'm like, these guys are everywhere. Every time I turn around, so another sighting. So I thought that was It was funny. It was interesting. So thank you. Thank you so much for all the work. Okay. Okay, so now let's move on to ordinances. Item 10, first reading, Council Bill 834, ordinance for the 2021-2022 biennial budget amendment. That's the budget that we're currently in right now. This is 10A. We'll have a staff report from Steve Groom. Steve?
Thank you. I will be quick. Running out of budget is one of the most stressful things that happens to anyone who's managing a departmental budget. And this is a routine item, and it needs to be self-explanatory. You've got a cover memo and you have some tables, and I've tried to make it a little bit more self-explanatory, and I realize that if we're going to bring this to you this frequently, it requires 2 readings, so we can't bring it too often. But let me just tell you that there are 4 reasons that we need to come to bring a budget amendment. First off, it's real simple. If we have new revenues, then of course that means we're going to have some new expenses that can be spent if we amend the budget for the additional revenues and the additional grants. Also, it's pretty common for people to bring items to you, the council, that you approve, that then finance needs to capture. Add it to the budget so that it then becomes appropriated so we can legally spend it. And the departments get a little stressed if that takes time. Also, there are some adjustments for things that simply weren't known at the time of the adopted budget. New urgent things, and you see a lot of them, they can be funded from revenues that come in favorable to budget. And in this table in your packet, you can see that our strong sales tax has allowed us to greenlight a few things. The fourth thing is just technical accounting fixes, such as for ARPA-funded police vehicles. That was originally in the budget in the general fund. We need to move it over to the fleet fund, and we can't do that without council approval. We need to be transparent. We need to be obvious so that the public sees what we're doing it. So in your packet, you've got a memo that lists the details, and I think next time we bring a budget amendment, I will list these 4 items and list for you which category each of the items falls in. They're all perfectly understandable. Finance takes considerable effort to communicate with all the departments. This is the last 2 city council meetings we have, so we have to get it right to get this current budget amended to capture all the things that we need to do. And we've got more schedules than you'd probably prefer to read. It's schedule, I think, exhibit A, B, C, D, E, and that provides an audit trail from the original adopted budget through to where we're at now. That will keep the auditors happy. So with that, that's the explanation for what we're doing, all of the details in your packet. This is the first reading, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Dovey?
Oh,
okay. All right. Council, any questions? Okay, not seeing any questions. Do we have any public comment?
I don't have anyone signed up, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Would the city clerk please read the ordinance title?
Council Bill 834, Ordinance 2021-2022 Biennial Budget Amendment, an ordinance of the City of Federal, Washington relating to amending the 2021-2022 biennial budget.
Councilmember Tran, do you have a motion?
I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the December 6, 2022 council meeting for second reading and enactment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second?
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, matter passes unanimously. All right, second reading and enactment. Item B, Council Bill 831, ordinance the 2023-2024 biennial budget. Would the city clerk please read the ordinance title?
Council Bill 831, Ordinance 2023-2024 Biennial Budget, an ordinance of the City of Federal, Washington relating to budgets and finance adopting the 2023-2024 biennial budget.
Council President Kochmar.
I move approval of the proposed ordinance.
All right.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
No.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, matter passes unanimously.
Nay.
Nay.
Oh, okay. Can we do a roll call, please?
Councilmember Sefadossin?
Aye.
Councilmember Norton?
Nay.
Councilmember Tran?
Aye.
Councilmember Walsh?
Aye.
Councilmember Dovey?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
Nay.
Council President Kochmar? Motion carries 5-2.
All right. Okay, now moving on to item C, Council Bill 832, Ordinance 2023 Property Tax. Would the city clerk please read the ordinance title?
Council Bill 832, ordinance 20...
You're out of order.
Council Bill 832, ordinance 2023 property tax, an ordinance of the City of Federal, Washington relating to fixing the property tax amount for the year of 2023.
All right, Council President Kochmar, do you have a motion?
I move approval of the proposed ordinance.
All right,
Second.
so my motion is second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, matter passed unanimously. Item D, Council Bill 833, ordinance modifying the city's regulation of shopping carts. Would the city clerk please read the ordinance title?
Council Bill 833, ordinance modifying the city's regulation of shopping carts, an ordinance of the City of Federal, Washington relating to the regulation of shopping carts within the city, amending Federal Revised Code 703020, 725030, 725040, and 725060, adding a new section to Chapter 630, including Section 630070, and adding a new section to Chapter 725, including Section 725070.
All right, Councilmember Walsh, would you, do you have a motion?
I move approval of the proposed ordinance.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Mayor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, Councilmember, I'm sorry, we need to, hold on, let's stop for a second. Councilmember Tran?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
The first question is, I believe at the last meeting, Brian shared with us that the cost of the program is about $250,000. Is that correct?
The estimated cost of adding these provisions to the ordinance for operating it is about $250 at this point. We don't really know until we get into it, but that's our safe estimate at this point.
Is that a yearly or is that
Annual.
one? Annual?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Well, I should say, there are some one-time, well, not one-time, but costs that won't be annual. The staffing will be annual, so there's one staff person. There are vehicles and equipment that will last much longer than a year. So that cost won't be annual, but will be a little bit less over time.
okay, thank you. I also remember that Chief Wong shared with us that the officer who will be responding to this type of issue will come out from the special op unit. So my question is, if we don't have to deal with this issue, those officers who work in the special op unit can be utilized to respond to 911 call in the city, or no?
It's not anticipated that we would, and if a 911 call came in, it's not anticipated, we're not going to have officers responding to 911 calls for this. It would be generated, I guess if we got a 911 call, I would imagine that Valleycom would be instructed to let our non-emergency personnel know about this.
Right, but my question is, let's say if we don't have this ordinance, so we don't have to use our officer to respond to the shopping cart stealing, right? Can we use those officers in the special op unit to respond to general emergency?
Generally, we don't. Generally, SOU responds to those types of calls that we're talking about that involves our homeless issues that we have. That's really their primary duty. However, depending on the how bad the emergency call is, they certainly could respond, but that's not typical that they do.
Thank you. So I'm really struggling with this ordinance. I know that we do have the issue with shopping cart in the city. I do recognize that. And I wish I have a better solution for this. But in my opinion, by passing this ordinance, like I stated at the last meeting, I feel like we are targeting a group of vulnerable, people in the community. I felt like this ordinance is intended to drive homeless people out of the city without providing any meaningful help. Let me remind everybody, I was once homeless, right? I did. But I turned my life around. Granted that I wasn't a drug, user or anything like that, but by definition, I was once homeless. So this ordinance has some unintended consequences. I mentioned about the elderly person, a single mom with babies, and they have no means of transport their goods from one place to another at the last minute. And on top of that, if I remember correctly, Deputy Mayor Honda mentioned about her concern, safety concern for staff. So, like I said, I really want to support this, but I'm really struggling to find a good reason to support this ordinance, because to me it's designed to drive the homeless people out of the city, and for that I can't support this. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. I really like the idea that Jeffrey had this evening about creating a treatment facility at one of the hotels. I'm not sure what that would cost. I'm sure much more than we have available, but I know that the state has said many times that they have given South King County funding for drug treatment facilities, so perhaps that's something we could work with our state delegation with and get that there. I also would like to suggest that if anyone is stopped for this, that we have them see the peer navigators in the community court. Our judges have done a lot of work on community court, and we've all said that we support it. So this would be exactly the type of person that could benefit from community court, and I would like to see that happen. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Councilmember Walsh, and then Councilmember Dovey.
Yeah, going with what Deputy Mayor Honda said, I think that this gives those who are stopped another opportunity to interact with law enforcement and to have the opportunity to receive services, to perhaps go to the community court, to be able to be a time where they can be diverted from the lifestyle that they have, and can hopefully be helping them, because it's not compassionate, I don't think, to not do anything to help intervene with that lifestyle and not take action. So I think that this is actually a compassionate option that can help the community and help the individual and help the businesses that are impacted by the theft of shopping carts. So it's a win-win-win on 3 different levels.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Dovey?
Yeah, I think Deputy Mayor Hunt brings up a great idea that was brought up by the citizen tonight. One thing we might want to put on our agenda when we have our retreat, because we're not going to make the decision tonight on that, but I know that there's, at least one wing that's vacant up at the SCORE jail that's never been used. We might not be able to get King County to say, hey, we could have a floor in one of these, in these hotels that they bought here, but maybe there's funding with our state and with King County to start a federal way drug rehab program with the municipal court where we can actually get people treatment longer than 6 days, but maybe it's multiple months, maybe it's a year, maybe it's something that we need to, as a council, take it up and say, hey, we want to be different for these people and help them out, and use facilities that are vacant, funds that may be available, and kind of be the trailblazers on how we help the young, the old, the affirm that are on the streets that have drug, alcohol, and mental health issues.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Sefa Dawson?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add to what Councilmember Hong said. I do support what was brought up, and I think it's a great idea, Deputy Mayor Honda, to explore that. But I don't think the shopping cart issue does not have anything to do with this other thing that we're talking about. If we want to support this population, and Councilmember Walsh just said, compassionate is not about removing their belongings. It's about something completely different. It's about supporting them in different ways. So if peer navigation or sending them to community court is what it takes, then yes, I agree with that. But it's not about taking away the shopping cart from them. And also, I've said this before and I want to say it again. I have not seen any business owners come to us and say, my shopping carts have been taken and our business is impacted by that. And I am not advocating for shopping carts be taken. That's not my point. What I'm advocating for is that people be treated with dignity and that there's compassion. And I think just taking away something, and people assume what's in those carts are stolen goods, but what this person owns, I don't know, but what I may not consider valuable is valuable to that person, or they wouldn't even be walking around with those items, with those belongings that are theirs. And I'm not gonna assume they're stolen. I'm gonna believe it belongs to them. And so I do support the ideas about finding them help in other ways, but taking away shopping carts, I don't think is a solution to really the larger picture and the larger question that is at hand. And so that's my concern. I don't think this answers what we're really trying to solve. So putting our heads together with our community members, including people experiencing homelessness, and saying what would be the best route to support them, I think is what we need to do, rather than really focusing on shopping carts. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Norton?
Thank you for allowing me to speak. So this is a difficult subject for me because I'm someone who is formerly like those people who have those shopping carts. 16 years ago, I was homeless and I was a drug addict. And what it took for me to get help and to finally stop was to become so uncomfortable that I didn't have a choice. And that's what worked for me. And I never want to get that uncomfortable again for the rest of my life. It's called hitting bottom. And the more we help them and give them services and coddle them, the less likely it is that these people are going to stand up and learn how to take care of themselves. And I'm sorry about my video thing. I've got a dog and a husband next to me, and they're messing with my focus. But anyway, it's hard for me because I don't want to take people's stuff from them. And I know that if we take the shopping carts from these people, they're just going to go steal something else, or they're going to go get another shopping cart because that's what they do. This ordinance does not address that they need help. It doesn't address what to do with the person after you take the shopping cart with them. It doesn't really in my opinion, it's not really doing anything except making it inconvenient for the homeless person or the drug addict who's pushing the shopping cart around. But it's also supporting our community and keeping our streets from being cluttered and having the trash. So I'm going to vote yes on this because I told Jack that I would. And I also empathize with council members Assefa Dawson and Tran and Deputy Mayor Honda. I agree with them as well. But from my own experience and from 10 years of working with drug addicts and being in prisons, helping people who were in prison because of their drug addictions, and then helping people get into society and get off drugs. I've sponsored over 100 women. Being uncomfortable is the number one reason why we get sober. This will help them possibly hit bottom. Hitting bottom is the only way they're going to stop being out on the street. And if we can help them to hit bottom, I'm all for it. And I know it sounds cruel and it sounds terrible, but it really is the only way people like me get sober and stay sober, is to never want to feel like that again. And I still don't want to feel like that. And I still remember what it felt like. And I have a great life today, and I'm not going to risk ever going back. So I'll just stop there, and I will support you, Jack, on this.
All right, any other comments? Councilmember Tran?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Norton, for sharing your own personal story. Really appreciate it. My concern about this ordinance is about the cost, the ongoing cost to maintain this program. And the second thing is currently we don't have any support system in place to help these people. Once we took the shopping cart away or we issue them the ticket, there's a waiting list for them to get into the drug treatment. The current resources to help these people is not in place. So again, my struggling is that if we don't have the support in place and we pass this law and we start enforcing this at the cost of the city, cost of our police department, but in reality, we can't really help them get off drug. And the other thing that I want to make a comment is that homelessness is not a choice, it's not a lifestyle. No one wants to be homeless. So please remember that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Norton, did you have another comment?
People who are on drugs and living on the street are there because they don't want to abide by the laws and by the community standards that are set for people who aren't on drugs. Homeless people who aren't on drugs are 99% of the time, they are living on friends' couches. They're staying in their cars and they are 100% employed, or they're looking for a job. So most of the people on the street are on drugs. These aren't people who are responsible. They don't want to be responsible. They're living on the street because it's easy to live that way. No. I grew up on the street. My mother was one of these people. I have friends who still live on the streets because they want to do their drugs. They don't want to be sober. I've got friends who live in their own filth, and I love them, and they're my friends, and that's how they choose to live, and I've known them my entire life. You need to just get out and be there. This is a drug epidemic. This is not a homelessness epidemic. And the people who are pushing around shopping carts and leaning over and have needles sticking out of their arms, they're not homeless, they're drug addicts. And we've got to stop calling them homeless. They're drug addicted homeless. You know, homeless people and housing insecure people, it's a whole nother subject. And I think what we're doing here, it's not, I don't think that this ordinance is complete in that it does not get them where they need to go. It's making them uncomfortable. And if we make them so uncomfortable that they don't want to be in Federal Way anymore, I'm willing to bet our crime rate's going to drop dramatically. I'm willing to bet that car thefts and break-ins and problems with our businesses are going to drop dramatically. No, it isn't nice. And unfortunately, when it comes to drug addicts, you can't be nice to them. You can't coddle them out of this lifestyle. It's got to be something that hits them so hard that they don't have a choice. And I'm not a mean person by nature. I'm actually pretty kind. I know most people don't think that, but I care. And I want people to have success in life. I want everyone to have success. I want everyone who's living out on the street to be sober and experience what I experienced, which is joy in being sober. They're not going to get that way if we keep allowing them to stand on the streets, litter, have these shopping carts. You know, this is just one step. And I'm not, you know, and I'm, like I said before, it's not perfect, but it's just a step to get us toward where we need to be. And I'm going to get off my soapbox.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Stefa Dawson?
Yes. Erica, I do appreciate your passion. And, you know, you're right. It's not something I want for anybody. I don't wish this on anyone. Like Hong, I also have experienced homelessness, but I also had friends. I had a network that supported me. But the feeling was not good. It's not a place I ever want to, position I ever want to be in. I was not with my kids at night, at least. I saw them during the day, but at night they went with me, and that was a very sad journey, those 10 months that I experienced this. That said, I just said it earlier, this shopping cart ordinance is not going to take care of the overarching need. So whichever way this vote goes tonight and what we decide to do as a city, I would still want us to look at ways to support and help get people help, get them the services they need, and not just ignore or forget the overarching issue and say this ordinance is going to take care of this problem, you know, of either homelessness or drug addiction. So I just want us to be mindful and continue to work on it. If it's a task force doing it, whatever it takes, Mayor, please let's get it going. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Council President Kochmar?
Well, I can see we're a little split on this whole issue, and I can tell you that growing up, I was a very altruistic person. I was a social worker. I believed in helping people. I did a lot of that. I've helped a lot of people in my life at my own expense. But I can tell you, hitting a brick wall with a person on drugs, a member of my family, another member of my family with alcoholism, they won't help themselves. They have to hit that bottom. One child, I would pray that that person would be arrested so they'd go to jail and get help. Never happened. Sleeping on a mattress in the woods in another city, died on the streets, drug addict. Most of the issues we're dealing with people in our community are alcoholism and drug addiction. They are people who are not necessarily from our city. Some are. In fact, some of our children. But they are coming here from other places. I've personally seen one being dropped off across from the Multi-Service Center at the woods there on 336th with bags garbage bags of belongings and going into the woods. It's tragic. It's just tragic. We do have help for people. We will have more help for people. That's what we need to focus what we need to concentrate on, but we can't invite people here and say, come on, you can come here, we'll help you, we'll give you, we have a day center that is very, I mean, if you haven't been there, you have to go see what it's like now. It's very sophisticated, and they have a lot of resources. But some of these people, even though it's cold outside, they don't want to go to a shelter. They prefer to live outside so that they can do what they want. I can tell you, if it's 90% drugs and alcohol related, they have to hit bottom. And I think that anything we can do to get to that point is good. I don't think shopping cart ordinance is going to be a big solve our problem, but it's a piece to the puzzle that if people want to come here, they need to think about going other places if they're coming from other cities. We need to take care of our own. We need to get them the help that they need.
Okay, Councilmember Norton, did you have another comment?
I apologize. I didn't take my hand down. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Councilmember Tran?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I've been listening to this conversation, and it's really confirmed my belief that this ordinance is designed to target this population, drug user. Let's admit it, right? If that is the law that we want to design, then I think we should go ahead and admit it, that this is a law to design to drive out the drug addict people out of the city, including the homeless people. Once we pass this, it's become law, right? If somebody pushed the cart on the street, regardless of an elderly person or the drug addict, the officer have to apply the law equally. So two people, both maybe will get ticket. You may think that the drug user deserves the ticket, but what about the elderly person that don't have the walker to take the grocery or stuff home, so that she or he need to use that shopping cart? So I think this ordinance is mean-spirited, in my opinion.
All right. There's been a motion, a second, a thorough discussion. Councilmember Walsh, well, actually, there's been a motion, a second, the discussion. All those in favor of the proposal?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Stephanie?
Councilmember Safadosin,
Nay.
Councilmember Norton,
Aye.
Councilmember Tran,
Nay.
Councilmember Walsh,
Aye.
Councilmember Dovey,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Honda,
Aye.
Council President Kochmar.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-2.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Great discussion, a lot of hard work. Okay, we're now on to council reports. So it's the first meeting of it's the second meeting. We'll start down at this end. Councilmember Dovey.
No report.
Councilmember Walsh.
Hey, I want to thank the council for passing that last ordinance, but also I understand the position that Councilmember Tran and Councilmember Safadosin take, and I agree wholeheartedly that we need to provide more resources for those who are ready to make a change. And I think that needs to be a matter of serious council discussion in the future, and perhaps one of the things that we discuss at the council retreat.
All right, thank you.
And we need to be investigating where we can get funding for more help for them.
Thank you. Councilor Tran?
I just want to take this opportunity to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Councilmember Norton.
Regarding drug addicted homeless, I sent everyone on the city council a very detailed plan on how to address this issue. And I've also asked to have grants looked at by our administration. I've had meetings with Judge Larson, King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, our city attorney, trying to get some help and ask people to support helping our drug addicted homeless get into long-term relapse prevention. And the only response I got from somebody on council was, I'm going to consult the experts on this, and I never heard about it again. So I'm asking you guys to please, I'm going to send it out again to you, and I'm asking, will you please take this seriously? And just pretend that it's not me sending it to you. Pretend that it's a consultant, somebody who's been published in 2 academic journals for research on drug addiction, because that's me. So, and somebody who's actually experienced it, and just take what I put together seriously and just read it. It's only 2 pages. It's a start. We need to address this. We've got to find funding. There's lots of federal funding for drug addiction and addressing this. We have the ability to do this. We have the buildings. And if you guys would be willing to just work with me, give me input, say, I don't like this aspect of it, and give me some support, maybe we can, as a city council, come up with some solutions other than shopping carts. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Stephen Dawson.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to let you know that both Deputy Mayor and I are in Charleston, South Carolina for National Foundation for Women Legislators Conference. And it's been a great conference. There's been great workshops. And I think it'd be, when we come back, there's some things that we could share with the rest of you. And tomorrow we leave from here to go to NLC. And so I hear it's very cold there. So hopefully we'll be fine going there, Deputy Mayor. We can go back home now. So with that, thank you and good night, everyone.
All right, thank you. All right, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I want to call attention to Federal Way High School. Their drama department is having their last weekend of their fall play called Blith Spirit. Shows, it's playing this weekend, November 11th through 19th, and shows are at 7 p.m. on that Friday and Saturday. Tickets are $12 for adults and $6 for students, seniors, and the military. And it's cash only at the door. And on November 5th, I had the opportunity to work in the Federal Way Stadium concession stand for the very last time. Federal Way High School was playing Curtis, trying to get into a playoff situation, and Federal Way won 37-17. It was a really good game. But it was the last time that we would be in the stadium because sometime in the next couple of weeks, they're going to start tearing the stadium down, and hopefully it's rebuilt by football season next fall. If it's not, I'm not sure where we'll be playing football. But the Kiwanis Club has served in that stadium in the concession stand for probably 40 or 50 years. And there's a lot of good memories there. So if you are excited about a new football stadium, a new stadium here in Federal Way, it'll be interesting to watch the progress. I like to watch new buildings being built, and this will be very interesting to watch. And I'd like to thank the Human Services Commission they have a really tough job. They have to read a lot. There's a lot of applications that come in every single time that they go through this process. I know that they had some commission meetings that were very long and started in the afternoon and got done in the evening. So thank you very much for what you do, and thank you for your recommendations, and for staff, Sarah, and staff who work with the Human Services Commission. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Council President Kochmar?
Oh, thank you. I thought I'd just mention that Kiwanis made $40,000 in the concession stand this year. That was
Wow.
quite a bit of money for scholarships.
Wow.
One young man asked me one time what I made working in the concession stand, and I said, you couldn't pay me enough to work in here. It's crazy. Councilmember Norton, if you'd give me a call, I'd appreciate it. Let's put our heads together. I'm a very verbal person, so when I get a 2-page email, I might not read the whole thing. So I'd really appreciate it if you'd call me and let's put our heads together. And I think that's a good idea about how to move forward. We do need to move forward on making sure that's a priority with our legislative agenda on treatment plans. And again, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And remember, the Multi-Service Center can always use extra turkeys and extra food for people for Thanksgiving. Thank you.
With that, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Thank you to the staff, council. It's an honor to serve. It's an honor and a pleasure to serve with each and every one of you. Be safe and happy.
Good night.
Good night.